Chapter 2782. Are you looking for Lin Feng? Do you have nothing better to do? The barbaric dragon Great Ian God sneered. He wouldn't put in the effort to find Lin Feng. Even if he did, he wouldn't be a match for Lin Feng. Although he couldn't understand how someone as insignificant as Huang Zun could be so strong, the deaths of the Black Flame Great Ian God, the Wild Kuan Great Ian God, and the Golden Arrow Great Ian God were still vivid in his mind. One could be a coincidence or a fluke, but would it still be a coincidence if it happened 3 or 4 times? This kind of tricky task would be left to the Great Ian God. He wouldn't meddle. The barbaric dragon Great Ian God had left the Great Reincarnation Realm and entered the Small Reincarnation Realm with selfish motive. He had searched the Great Reincarnation Realm for so long without finding any trace of Lin Feng. Although he didn't spend any effort looking for him, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't bump into him by chance. He couldn't stay in place and do his job half-heartedly. Thus, he could only enter the Small Reincarnation Realm and waste some time. He couldn't possibly bump into him in the Small Reincarnation Realm, right? I'm really wise. The barbaric dragon Great Ian God laughed mischievously. His huge dragon tail twitched the space and made a clanging sound. Even Taichu cultivators would hide when they saw him. In the Small Reincarnation Realm, a peak Yuan Venerate could be considered the strongest combat power, regardless of which universe they came from. Suddenly, the barbaric dragon Great Ian God's expression changed. His huge figure suddenly stopped in midair. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the barbaric dragon Great Ian God's scaled body was trembling slightly. In an instant it trembled violently and blood spurted out. Bang! The barbaric dragon Great Ian God's eyes were lifeless. His huge body fell directly from the sky and landed heavily. Shock and unwillingness remained on his face. Up until his death, the barbaric dragon Great Ian God didn't understand why he had still bumped into Lin Feng despite clearly avoiding him. However, at least the barbaric dragon Great Ian God understood one thing, which was how the other Great Ian Gods had died. How powerful could a little fellow like Huang Zun be? He had killed a peak Yuan Venerate in an instant. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure appeared in the sky above the barbarian dragon Grand Eternity God. He calmly looked down and let out a light sigh. Universe 7's godly inquisition is indeed very resourceful. I was hiding in the Small Reincarnation World, yet they were still able to find me. We can't stay here for long. Whoosh! Lin Feng collected the storage ring and treasures of the barbaric dragon Grand Eternity God and headed for the great Samsara realm where Silvereye was. There was only one path in the Small Reincarnation World, and there was nowhere to hide. If he wanted to confront Universe 7's godly inquisition, he could only change the location. The Great Reincarnation Realm was the most suitable place. However, the possibility of finding a quiet place to cultivate in the Great Reincarnation Realm was too low. But there was nothing he could do about it. Who asked Universe 7's godly inquisition's great universe god to be so powerful? In such a short time, he was able to find his hiding place. It seems that I still underestimated Universe 7's godly inquisition. But it's enough. That special type Pinnacle Chaos Ultimate Treasure is almost completely refined. Lin Feng had planned to refine all 3 pinnacle treasures of the Chaos before leaving. But now that things had happened so suddenly, he had no choice. Plans could not keep up with changes. He could only take one step at a time. Shock! Xing Jin Grand Eternity God, who had just cursed the barbaric dragon Grand Eternity God for fishing in troubled waters, was shocked. He had received the last mental message of the barbaric dragon Grand Eternity God. Just now, the barbaric dragon Grand Eternity God had found Lin Feng, but the result of finding him was death. The Kuan Yi Grand Eternity God, the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God, and the barbaric dragon Grand Eternity God were the same. He's hiding in the Small Reincarnation Realm. How cunning! Xing Jin Grand Eternity God gritted his teeth and rushed to Silver Eye's location as fast as he could. He thought that Lin Feng would come in the direction of Silver Eye, but he did not expect to be played by Lin Feng. In his opinion, Lin Feng's character was like a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. He was not afraid of anyone. He knew that there was a tiger in the mountain, but he still went to the mountain. He had always fought head-on with Universe 7's godly inquisition. Who would have thought that he would suddenly go soft? He actually fled to the small reincarnation realm to hide. It seems that I have wronged Barbaric Dragon. Xing Jin Grand Eternity God felt a little guilty. As his last old subordinate, Barbaric Dragon did his best to help him find Lin Feng. In the end, he even died, but he still blamed Barbaric Dragon for fishing in troubled waters. Thinking about it, it was a little too much. Rest in peace, Barbaric Dragon. I will kill Lin Feng and avenge you. Xing Jin Grand Eternity God's eyes flashed with killing intent. He clearly confirmed Lin Feng's location and nodded secretly. The opportunity had come. Barbaric Dragon used his life to create a good opportunity to kill Lin Feng. Although he was far away from Silver Eye and the small reincarnation realm, the three-eyed Grand Eternity God happened to be nearby. He would definitely reach Silver Eye's location before Lin Feng. At that time, Lin Feng would enter the big reincarnation realm and must pass through Silver Eye's reincarnation. If he stayed in the small reincarnation realm, they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Because there was only one path to the small reincarnation realm. Clang! Like a peerless war god, the three-eyed Grand Eternity God stood in front of Silver Eye with his halberd in hand. His majestic fighting spirit seemed to freeze the entire space. A terrible aura enveloped the entire area. No one could get close. He was the first to arrive at Silver Eye's location. The three-eyed Grand Eternity God was very sure that he would arrive before Lin Feng. He only needed to wait patiently. If he chased after Lin Feng, it was very likely that he would slip away. After all, although there was only one path to the small reincarnation realm, there were many forks. When the time came, it was very likely that he would pass by because of a small mistake. The three-eyed Grand Eternity God didn't want to take the risk. To enter the big reincarnation realm, Silver Eye's reincarnation was the only path. As long as he waited here, he would definitely be able to wait until Lin Feng arrived. If Lin Feng didn't come, when the Kanwu Grand Eternity God and the Xing Jin Grand Eternity God arrived, Lin Feng would have nowhere to hide. When chasing prey, one didn't have to go all out to chase after them. It was the same to slowly surround them until they had nowhere to hide. Finally, they would slowly dismember them. Whether Lin Feng came or not, in the end, only death awaited him. A whoosh! Just as the three-eyed Grand Eternity God predicted, Lin Feng was rushing towards Silver Eye's reincarnation. The path to the small reincarnation realm was too narrow and unsuitable for guerrilla warfare. Although Lin Feng could choose to retreat to the ancient battlefield and return to Feather God Ridge to make further plans, fleeing without fighting was not his style. Moreover, Lin Feng had absolute confidence in his current battle strength. He was no longer in a sorry state when he was chased by the Yinyang Grand Eternity God. The one who was afraid was no longer him. Silver Eye's reincarnation is up ahead. Lin Feng already knew the path. Even if he didn't, his sense of calling could guide him in the right direction. Moreover, the feeling of calling was stronger than before because the Origin Heart Force was abundant and resonated with the Origin world. If Universe 7's Inquisition isn't stupid, there will definitely be experts guarding Silver Eye. As soon as he entered the Rinnegan, his Origin Heart Force communicated with heaven and earth. Lin Feng had already seen a familiar existence. Under Silver Eye's gaze, this person stood upright and fearless, his fighting spirit boundless. Three-eyed Grand Eternity God. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The number one expert of the Heavenly Tao reincarnation. Interesting. Chapter 2783. Lin Feng remembered the three Aeon gods the most from the Battle of Taichung God Realm. One was Eternal Aeon God, one was Xing Jin Aeon God, and the last was Three-Eyed Aeon God. The first two were Master Aeon gods. Only Three-Eyed Aeon God wasn't. Although they weren't as strong in the Hongmeng Sea as they were in the original universe, their foundation was there. The fact that Three-Eyed Aeon God was the #1 general of the Heavenly Tao reincarnation wouldn't change. He was indeed very strong. But now, he was also very strong. Boom! Lin Feng used the Origin Sea attack again. With the abundant Origin Sea energy and the Nine Hells' baleful aura fused with the Heart Force, the power of the Starfall Fourth Firmament was fully displayed. An ultimate secret art. Lin, the Three-Eyed Aeon God, didn't panic. He raised a hand in front of him, and a magical seal appeared. Clear patterns appeared on his forehead, and his eyes flashed. Not only was he protected by a pinnacle chaos treasure, but he was also protected by a secret technique. He lived up to his reputation as the #1 general of the Heavenly Tao reincarnation. Three-Eyed Aeon God had absolute strength and foundation, whether it was close combat or long-range defense. Over countless epochs, Three-Eyed Aeon God had encountered countless enemies. He was very familiar with Origin Sea and Origin Soul attack. What a strong soul defense! Lin Feng felt that the enemy was difficult to deal with. Origin Sea attacks had more advantages than Origin Soul attacks, but they also had more disadvantages. If he couldn't break the enemy's defense, he would suffer more damage. Three-Eyed Aeon God's Peak Soul Defense True Treasure was similar to Kuan Yi Aeon God and Golden Arrow Aeon God's Soul Defense True Treasures. But his will was far stronger than the other two. He also had a secret art and a stronger bloodline. Even without the blessing of the original universe's Heavenly Tao reincarnation, Three-Eyed Aeon God was still worthy of being the #1 general of the Heavenly Tao reincarnation. Immovable as a mountain. No matter how strong Lin Feng's Origin Sea attacks were, Three-Eyed Aeon God didn't move. His expression didn't even change. A truly powerful opponent. The Heart Force controlled the Nine Hells' baleful aura and fused it with the Origin Sea. It was effective against a cultivator's will, but the most fatal part was the erosion of the opponent's Origin Sea or Sea of Consciousness. However, without breaking through the Peak Soul Defense True Treasure, it didn't have much effect. Lin Feng's Origin Sea treasures were too weak. Although the Rain-Painted Mirror was a supreme-grade Perfect Chaos True Treasure and its effect was extremely close to that of a Pinnacle Chaos True Treasure, it was still a Perfect Chaos True Treasure and was naturally weaker in terms of grade. Moreover, there were also differences between Pinnacle Chaos True Treasures. The difference between ordinary and supreme-grade Perfect Chaos True Treasures was enormous. The Three-Eyed Eternity God blocked it. With his absolute strength, although it couldn't be said to be easy, he firmly blocked it. Like an impregnable fortress, he resisted the endless attacks of the enemy. If it was the Lin Feng from when he killed the Golden Arrow God, he would have to consider how to escape unscathed. However, during this period of time, Lin Feng's cultivation in the small reincarnation world was not in vain. Lin Feng's comprehension from his source Sea kept increasing. By now, more than half of his great source soul fruits had been consumed, and he had killed countless godly venerates and yuan venerates. While obtaining treasures, the most precious thing was the experience gained and the comprehension of absolute arts increased. Starfall 5th level. This was the first time Lin Feng had used a brand new secret technique. This was his most profound comprehension of breaking through to the source sea. If the fourth layer of the fallen star firmament was just the beginning of the secret technique's threshold, then the fifth layer of the fallen star firmament was already at the level of an ordinary secret technique. Although it was only at the level of an ordinary absolute art, its power was several times stronger than the Starfall 4th level. It was the embodiment of true strength. Come on! The Three-Eyed Eternity God became stronger when facing a strong opponent. His third eye, which had been closed all this time, suddenly opened and shone with endless brilliance. Following the opening of his third eye, his aura and power soared instantly. Even his internal universe was sublimated by a level. A heaven-defying bloodline. The number one expert of the Sky Dao reincarnation. Boom, boom, boom. A needle against an awl, a collision of absolute strength. Although Lin Feng's secret techniques were strong, the three-eyed eternal god was no ordinary powerhouse when he went all out. At this time, even his inner universe was faintly gaining the upper hand. His bloodline and ability had completely sublimated. However, not good. The three-eyed eternity god's expression suddenly changed. Although he had started to gain the upper hand in all aspects, facing Lin Feng's endless origin sea attack, especially with the addition of an absolute art secret technique, his soul defense true treasure actually began to crack. This situation was similar to a close combat battle. Although he was clearly stronger than his opponent, his battle armor was gradually breaking down and couldn't withstand the fierce battle. The consequences were very fatal. In close combat, the breaking of the battle armor was equivalent to dropping one's body defense to the freezing point. In the soul attack, the shattering of the soul defense treasure was equivalent to completely exposing one's origin sea and origin sea to the opponent. Boom! Like an army breaking through the enemy's formation, Lin Feng's origin sea army pressed down. The nine hells' infernal energy instantly corroded the three-eyed eternity god's knowledge sea. In this evenly matched battle, Lin Feng finally seized the initiative. However, the three-eyed eternity god didn't panic even though he was at a disadvantage. The suppression of his internal universe, the runes on his forehead lit up, and he continuously formed seals. Although this wasn't his strongest offensive ability, the three-eyed eternity god didn't have any weaknesses. Hua, a pure and holy light, protected the three-eyed eternity god's knowledge sea. His firm will made the erosion of the nine hells' infernal energy even more difficult. Even without the protection of his soul defense treasure, the three-eyed eternity god was exceptionally tenacious. No matter how disadvantaged he was, he wouldn't easily admit defeat. However, the three-eyed eternity god didn't specialize in the Tao of the soul. Without a soul defense treasure, it was difficult for him to advance. If he continued to defend, he was bound to lose. Under Lin Feng's origin sea's repeated attacks, the three-eyed eternity god's defenses grew weaker and weaker, and his complexion grew increasingly ugly. In an instant, a ray of light appeared. Endless red light appeared and enveloped the three-eyed eternity god. The moment Lin Feng's origin sea blasted the three-eyed eternity god's knowledge sea, it seemed to have lost its target and could no longer sense the three-eyed eternity god's existence. He had escaped. The three-eyed eternity god had been seriously injured and defeated. Sure enough, it won't be easy to kill him. Many Yuan venerate powerhouses had life-saving treasures. How could the three-eyed eternity god, as the number one general of the Sky Path reincarnation, not have any trump cards? Furthermore, Lin Feng hadn't completely suppressed him or gained the upper hand in this battle. This was different from the previous attacks. However, his sea of consciousness was severely damaged. Although I wasn't able to kill him, I won't be able to see him again for a very long time. Lin Feng knew that this battle had dealt a huge blow to the three-eyed eternal god. The three-eyed eternity god could no longer pose a threat to Luo Yunyang. Once he recovered from his injuries, the next time they met, he would be even stronger. Chapter 2784. My utilization of Source Heart Force is still too shallow. This was the biggest realization Lin Feng had gained from this battle. Source Heart Force was almost useless before he broke through the three-eyed eternal god's soul defense treasure. After breaking through the soul defense treasure, the effect of Source Heart Force on the three-eyed eternal god, who had an amazing willpower, was next to nothing. The three-eyed eternal god simply wouldn't have had a chance to escape if Source Heart Force had worked like the other Yuan venerate powerhouses. The momentary distraction of the Source Sea's impact would have been fatal. Fortunately, Luo Yunyang had still won. By relying on the Starfall 5th level, he had won by a hair's breadth. By increasing my Source Heart Force and increasing its utilization, my combat strength can still improve. It wasn't easy to increase the power of an ultimate technique, but Source Heart Force had just been developed and there was still a lot of room for improvement. Previously, he had used the Silver Eye Realm to improve it, so he could still sense it clearly. Perhaps there would be another Silver Eye Realm ahead. The battle with the Three-Eyed Eternal God had deepened Lin Feng's understanding of the strength of Universe 7's Divine Tribunal. If the Three-Eyed Eternal God alone was so difficult to deal with, then the three strongest Eternal Gods would be even more terrifying. Luo Yunyang probably wouldn't be a match for any of the three Eternal Gods. If we had fought in the original universe, I would have been the one to lose. In the Hongming Sea, the Three-Eyed Eternal God was only an ordinary peak Yuan Venerate powerhouse. However, in the original universe, his strength was comparable to an almighty. Luo Yunyang hadn't won this battle easily at all. The Three-Eyed Eternal God had lost? Xingjin Great Ian God and Skydance Great Ian God were incomparably shocked. They were well aware of the strength of the Three-Eyed Great Ian God. He was the #1 general of the heavenly Tao Samsara. Even compared to Xingjin Great Ian God, he was only slightly inferior. Such a super powerhouse had actually lost to Lin Feng? He's just a little sovereign. I only defeated him, not killed him. Xingjin Eternal God's eyes glinted. He had a complete understanding of Lin Feng's strength, and the Three-Eyed Eternal God had clearly informed him of Lin Feng's strength. Three-Eyed's defeat was not due to battle. If he's like me and has a supreme soul defense artifact protecting him, Lin Feng will lose. The difference of a single grade of treasure had resulted in the hatred of defeat. It was indeed a pity that the Three-Eyed Ian God had lost. His armor and halberd were supreme chaos treasures, but his soul defense treasures were not. A primal chaos Huang Zun who only knows how to attack the Origin Sea. Cosmos God Kongwu wasn't afraid of Lin Feng. Although she wasn't as strong as the Three-Eyed Cosmos God, she was Yuan Venerate Demon Heart and her attainments in the Origin Soul Heavenly Tao were far superior to the Three-Eyed Cosmos God. Lin Feng wanted to kill her with his Source Sea? It was still unknown who would kill who. Recover. The energy of the Great Source Fruit gave Lin Feng inexhaustible strength. His Source Sea was soon filled to the brim. Furthermore, the Great Source Fruit contained perfect Source Soul power, so absorbing it could expand his Source Sea. Coupled with the cultivation of the peak chaos treasure, the endless vast ocean, Lin Feng's Source Sea improved even more rapidly. His Source Sea was also improving as his Source Soul improved. Lin Feng's improvement was very obvious. Not long after entering the Great Samsara Realm, he had also finished refining the special type Peak Chaos Treasure. Just as Lin Feng had expected, this was a life-saving treasure. Unfortunately, its owner had perished before he could use it. Nether Flame. Lin Feng was very satisfied with its effects. This was a treasure that had come at the right time and greatly increased his survivability. Lin Feng continued to refine the illusion-type Peak Chaos Treasure while moving quickly. Lin Feng didn't deliberately avoid Universe 7's Divine Inquisition. He would deal with whatever came his way. He wasn't afraid of trouble, even if the next opponent was Xingjin. The calling is getting stronger and stronger. Lin Feng gradually went deeper into the Great Samsara Realm. The deeper he went, the stronger the calling became. Using his Source Heart Force to communicate with the Origin Realms, Lin Feng seemed to see the Silver Eyes world again, as if something was waiting for him. He was getting closer and closer, but the Great Samsara Realm was too vast. Even if he knew the right path, it wouldn't be easy to get there. It would take a lot of time. Moreover, Kongwu and Xingjin were rapidly approaching. Lin Feng's battle with the Three-Eyed Eternal God had exposed him completely. He was definitely heading toward the golden-eyed eternal God. I have to master Netherflame as soon as possible. Although special-type treasures were easier to master than other treasures, they were peak chaos treasures after all. It would take a lot of energy to fully master them. Comprehending them while galloping would not only reduce one's speed, but also affect one's combat power. However, after weighing the pros and cons, Lin Feng still chose to master Netherflame. This life-saving treasure could play a good role in close-range attack. As long as the opponent's attack power wasn't at the level of an almighty, there was a chance to escape. It could be considered top-notch among peak chaos treasures. It was also luck that he had obtained this treasure that day. After all, Lin Feng had killed his opponent using his Source C instead of close-range attack. When this is over, I should also cultivate my physical body. Ever since the ancient battlefield, Lin Feng had been forced to leave by Universe 7's Divine Inquisition and had no time to cultivate his physical body. He could only take an unconventional path and go to extremes. What he was really good at was saber techniques and close-range abilities. The path of an origin primal chaos supremacy had to connect both. In a real sense, it was connecting all 6 paths. After comprehending the Source Heart Force, Lin Feng's internal universe was complete. It was now faintly better than the internal universes of many peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes. Of course, it was still inferior to those particularly strong peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes, such as the Three-Eyed Ian God or the Xingjin Ian God. Just like how Lin Feng's internal universe was inferior to the peak Yuan venerates in Taichu's Origin Primal Chaos universe. However, Lin Feng was only Huang Zun. Different peak Yuan venerate powerhouses had different strengths in their internal universes. An internal universe that cultivated only one heavenly Tao was weaker than an internal universe that cultivated 2 heavenly Taos. An internal universe that cultivated 2 heavenly Taos was weaker than an internal universe that cultivated 3 heavenly Taos. Of course, there was also a degree of perfection in one's internal universe. The internal universes of sub-universes were naturally flawed. Firstly, it was the heart force, and secondly, it was the soul force. However, Lin Feng was special. There was no lack of such special geniuses in Taichu's Origin Primal Chaos universe. For example, Little Hong Saber Rui, who ranked first on the Huang Zun list. Lin Feng had even seen him challenge the investiture of the gods in Hongming's Dual Polarity Tower. Not only did he cultivate all 6 paths, but he was also born in Taichu's Origin Primal Chaos universe, so his internal universe was perfect. The current Lin Feng was a far cry from Little Hong Saber Rui in terms of strength and combat strength. There were many super geniuses in Taichu's Origin Primal Chaos universe who cultivated all 6 paths. Little Hong Saber Rui was only one of them. However, Lin Feng had an advantage that Little Hong Saber Rui didn't have. Possession. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website Chapter 2785. The core of Lin Feng's internal universe was the true inheritance of the universe, but Taichu cultivators couldn't do it. They were born noble, so the Taichu origin universe had helped them achieve their goals but also restricted them to a certain extent. Could they possess the Taichu origin universe? Some ambitious Taichu cultivators had tried, but all of them had failed without exception. The difficulty was too terrifying. However, Lin Feng could possess a sub-universe. Back then, Yellow Spring had had a certain chance to possess a sub-universe, but he had failed because he wasn't strong enough. The Heavenly Great Path's will of the sub-universe wouldn't give Yellow Spring any chance and would definitely kill him while he was still weak. Unfortunately, if Yellow Spring had become an Origin Chaos Yuan Venerate, he would have been almost invincible in the Origin universe. The chances of the Heavenly Great Path's will and Universe 7's Divine Judgment killing him would have been much smaller. Of course, even if Yellow Spring had become a peak Yuan Venerate, the chances of him failing to possess a sub-universe were still very high. However, Lin Feng was different. Firstly, Lin Feng's internal universe was more perfect. Secondly, Lin Feng's first possession was a super black hole, so his foundation was stronger than Yellow Spring's. At the same level, Lin Feng was much stronger than Yellow Spring. Yellow Spring had killed the great Ian God when he was a godly venerate, but Lin Feng had been able to do it when he was Huang Zun. Moreover, he had killed more than Yellow Spring. However, Yellow Spring had been severely injured by an almighty in the Hongmeng Sea and had fled back to the origin universe, where he had been besieged by 3 great Ian gods and ultimately perished. Now it was like Shizhong's movie. Universe 7's divine judgment had been defeated repeatedly, and the powerhouses it sent were getting stronger and stronger. Great Ian God Xingjin was already very close to Lin Feng. Don't even think about escaping. The aggressive great Ian God Xingjin was extremely calm despite his extreme anger. The entire divine judgment land had been turned upside down by Lin Feng. As the great Ian God of the divine judgment land, he had already lost all face and was ready to go all out. He would not give up until he killed Lin Feng. After the battle between Lin Feng and the three-eyed Lin Feng, Xingjin had a complete understanding of Lin Feng's strength. He had absolute confidence that as long as he met Lin Feng, he would be able to kill him. As long as Lin Feng headed in the direction of Golden Eye reincarnation, then he would definitely encounter it. Although there is no dead end in the Great Samsara Realm, there are many Great Samsara Realms that I can barely sense the presence of practitioners. They should be at the border of the Great Samsara Realm, which is not on the route from Silver Eye to Golden Eye, and may be very far from the main route. Although Lin Feng didn't have a map of the Great Reincarnation Realm, he could make a guess. Although Lin Feng wanted to go to Golden Eye reincarnation, it didn't mean that he had to go in a straight line and use the most correct route, which would put him in the enemy's sights. Although Lin Feng wasn't afraid of Xingjin and even wanted to fight him, Lin Feng knew very well that he was no match for Xingjin at present. It would be best if he could avoid him and buy more time. Moreover, taking a long detour wasn't a waste of time, but a maximum use of time fragments. While mastering Ghostly Fire, he was also refining an illusion-type peak chaos treasure. The 5th Heaven of Fallen Star secret skill was already Lin Feng's current limit. It wasn't that he couldn't improve it, but Lin Feng hadn't used it enough times, so his understanding of the Source Sea was limited. If he wanted to improve it further, he would need more actual combat, more experience, and more time to comprehend it. I'm almost there. Ghostly Fire was a life-saving peak chaos treasure, so mastering it wasn't too difficult. After spending some time, Lin Feng finally grasped the trick. While dodging, he approached Golden Eye. Although Lin Feng wasn't sure if he could shake off his pursuers, this was already the best he could do. The rest was up to fate. 100 Million Wheel Origin Realm, where Golden Eye was located. The Golden Eye was like the eye of the void. Its resplendent luster contained intense perfect source heart force. Entering its range of vision would cause one's willpower to disintegrate instantly. Even a peak Yuan venerate would be severely affected. Those with weak willpower would even sink forever. Beyond the Golden Eye reincarnation realm was the 100 Million Wheel Grave. At this moment, a huge metal body was standing right in front of them. It had a bald head, thin and long eyebrows, and a pair of eyes that emitted a clear and cold gaze. Its thick and solid Qilin arms were enough to erupt with astonishing power. It was Xingjin. He had been searching for Lin Feng in the Great Reincarnation Realm for a long time, but he still hadn't found any trace of him. After meeting up with the Grand Eternity God Kongwu, he decided that the Grand Eternity God Kongwu would continue to search for Lin Feng in the Great Reincarnation Realm while he stood guard in front of the Golden Eyes. He absolutely couldn't give Lin Feng a chance to enter Golden Eye. Once he entered the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Even their own lives would be in danger, let alone find Lin Feng. Xingjin believed that Lin Feng's ultimate goal had to be the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. Everything else was just a smokescreen. After all, Lin Feng had to enter the 100 million wheel tomb if he wanted to complete his mission. The Eye of Samsara couldn't be found in other regions. Let's see if I guessed correctly this time. Xingjin Great Ian God wasn't afraid of wasting time. He would waste time here with Lin Feng. Even if 100 years passed, Xingjin Great Ian God wouldn't move. He was like a piece of Xingjin in the Hongmeng Sea. No matter what happened, he would remain as steady as ever. After a long time, Xingjin seemed to have entered a meditative state. During this period, other cultivators entered Golden Eye Samsara one after another. Xingjin didn't even take a second look at them and let them pass. As for those Peak Yuan Venerate cultivators, they wouldn't find trouble with Xingjin either. After all, he wasn't someone to be trifled with. He's finally here. Through the peak chaotic treasure, Xingjin's aura had already spread throughout the entire great Samsara realm. As long as Lin Feng appeared, he would be able to sense him immediately. His sparkling eyes opened and shot out 2 rays of cold light. Xingjin's huge body stood up straight as a murderous aura emanated from him. His figure flashed as he teleported. He wouldn't give Lin Feng any chance to escape. His aura had already been locked onto. When Xingjin locked onto Lin Feng also discovered Xingjin's presence. An unprecedented pressure came over him, as though he had returned to the battle of the Taichung deity realm. At that time, he could only hide behind his eldest senior brother and second senior brother and had been powerless to resist. Now, he had already been reborn. He's very smart. Lin Feng didn't run away, as he knew very well that he couldn't escape. Xingjin's majestic killing intent descended in the blink of an eye. He was a transcendent existence that had dominated the original universe for eons. He had once been one of the main culprits who had killed Senior Yellow Spring. He had also been the executor of the Heavenly Great Path's will to hunt down Lin Feng. Divine Judgment Earth Master Ian God, Xingjin Great Ian God. Boom. The instant he felt this immense killing intent, Lin Feng had already attacked. There was no need for any unnecessary words, as the two of them had long since decided that they would not rest until one of them died. Let's fight. Chapter 2786. Boom. Lin Feng instantly unleashed the power of his Source C with the help of the Power Source Sacred Fruit. The Power Source Sacred Fruit had a considerable effect on those who had yet to reach the perfect Source C. It could raise the upper limit by a lot. In particular, the Starfall Fifth Sky was already a peak chaos treasure that could easily destroy a soul defense type. Even someone as strong as the Three-Eyed Ian God, whose soul defense and willpower were impeccable, would have no choice but to retreat as long as his soul defense treasure was destroyed. The secret techniques Lin Feng comprehended were his own path, so they were most suitable for him and were most compatible with his Source C. They complemented each other. Even without the assistance of Source Heart Force, the power was still amazing enough that Peak Yuan Venerates would find it difficult to resist, especially when Lin Feng's internal universe was in balance. However, his opponent this time was extraordinary, the Master Ian God of Divine Judgment. In the Divine Tribunal of Universe 7, Eternal God Xingjin had been in power for countless eras and was considered invincible in the Origin universe. Even in the Hongmeng Sea, Eternal God Xingjin was stronger than most Peak Yuan Venerates from the Taichu Origin universe. His internal universe was very strong. His soul defense was also very strong. As solid as a boulder. Unmovable mountain. It was an endless towering mountain that was extremely compatible with the power of Eternal God Xingjin. Furthermore, its quality was a supreme chaos treasure. Given Eternal God Xingjin's status, he not only possessed a supreme chaos treasure but also a Hongmeng source item. His strongest point was his physical defense, but his soul defense was also very good. Although his offensive power was slightly lacking, his super-strong defense was Lin Feng's nemesis. The Three-Eyed Ian God's offensive power was very strong, but what was the result? A crushing defeat. insignificant skill. Eternal deity Xing Jin had absolute confidence that he would be able to block Lin Feng's Origin C attack. He was most proud of his defensive abilities, and no matter which aspect of his defense it was perfect. However, the power of this kid's Source C attack is really amazing. Although he had handled it with ease, Eternal God Xing Jin still sighed. It was no wonder that even the three-eyed Ian God had been defeated. It was no wonder that Lin Feng had killed all the Ian gods under him. It wasn't that they were weak, but that Lin Feng was really strong. Right now, he had the advantage of treasures, internal universe, and strength. Even with these three advantages, Lin Feng's Origin C still managed to injure him to a certain extent. This Huang Zun human boy was like an indestructible sharp blade, concentrating all his strength into his attack. However, as long as his attack was ineffective, he would die without a doubt. Hard force. He can even use origin energy? Xing Jin felt his will being affected. The impact of the Origin C contained traces of fiendish aura, causing him to be even more surprised by Lin Feng. The information he had received had never mentioned that Lin Feng even had Origin Heart Force. In the primal universe, there was no such thing as the heavenly Tao of Heart Force. It's useless. Although the Eternal God Xing Jin's Heart Force defense was ordinary, after being immersed in endless eras, his willpower wasn't the least bit inferior to the three-eyed Eternal Gods. He naturally wouldn't be shaken by Lin Feng's shallow willpower. He absolutely could not let him go. This was the Eternal God Xing Jin's only thought. Only after fighting did he realize how strong Lin Feng was. He was just a little guy like Huang Zun. When Huang Quan had just stepped into the ultimate God realm, he was probably weaker than him. The more outstanding Lin Feng's performance was, the more Xing Jin feared him. He was a ticking time bomb that must be removed as soon as possible. Otherwise, not only would he be blown to pieces, but even the entire Seventh Universe's Inquisition would be blown to smithereens. Unfortunately, you can only live until today. Xing Jin poured all his willpower into Unruly Mountain. No matter how fierce the Origin C's impact was, it didn't budge at all. He only needed to wait for Lin Feng's Origin C to exhaust its energy, then he could reap the fruits of victory. Boom! 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 The fifth layer Starfall Realm combined with the Origin C's impact was constantly attacking. Lin Feng's expression became more and more solemn. Ever since he learned the Origin C's impact, he had never failed. But this time, Lin Feng knew he had hit an iron plate. The Eternal God Xing Jin's defense was too terrifying. Not only was his physical defense strong, but his spiritual defense was also very strong. His internal universe is much stronger than mine. Lin Feng was at a disadvantage in all aspects. Although the internal universe of the Eternal God Xing Jin wasn't as strong as the peak Yuan Venerate of the Taichu's Origin Chaos universe, it wasn't much weaker and was stronger than his current self. Despite this disadvantage, the Eternal God Xing Jin still had the Supreme Chaos Treasure's spiritual defense and a strong willpower that wasn't a weakness. Lin Feng had tried a concentrated attack and a consumption attack, but he couldn't break through the huge spiritual defense mountain. No matter how exquisite the fifth layer Starfall Realm was, it was useless. Lin Feng knew that he would win half the battle as long as he could break through the defense of the Supreme Chaos Treasure. However, he couldn't break through it. The difference wasn't small at all. I won't have a chance of winning unless I have the same Source Soul attack as the Supreme Chaos Treasure. This battle had allowed the Eternal God Xing Jin to figure out Lin Feng's background, but Lin Feng had also figured out the background of the Eternal God Xing Jin. In contrast, Lin Feng had a deeper understanding of the Eternal God Xing Jin. Because Lin Feng was the main attacker, Lin Feng still had the initiative in the battle. Go! Lin Feng didn't hesitate at all. Since he couldn't break through the defense of the Eternal God Xing Jin, he would leave. There was no point in continuing to waste time. Although the huge consumption of the Source Sea's energy had seriously damaged Lin Feng, he could recover with enough time. After all, he had many treasures on him. Trying to escape? Ha ha! You can't escape. The eternal god Xing Jin laughed wantonly. The earth shook, ripples split, and space froze instantly. In order to capture Lin Feng, the eternal god Xing Jin had used up all his means and made full preparations. Blocking the attack of the Source Sea was one thing, and restricting Lin Feng's escape was another. He wouldn't give Lin Feng another chance. Luck. The entire great Samsara realm was under the control of the eternal god Xing Jin. The space energy had completely disappeared. Not only were other cultivators unable to enter the great Samsara realm, but Lin Feng also couldn't leave with the Rinnegan. The eternal god Xing Jin was determined to obtain the domain and special treasures at the same time. But in an instant, his expression changed. A strange worm full of wrinkles suddenly appeared in the void. Although it wriggled very slowly, it wasn't restricted by space and the domain. It was extremely special. Lin Feng's aura suddenly disappeared under the huge wrinkled body. Where do you think you're going? The eternal god Xing Jin roared and punched the soft body of the giant worm with a pair of iron fists condensed with perfect source force. With a bang, it smashed into the worm's soft body, but it was as if it had hit a ball of cotton. Most of the power was dissipated. Not good. The eternal god Xing Jin gritted his teeth. His biggest weakness was his lack of attack power. Chapter 2787. The giant phantom worm wriggled slowly. Although each movement seemed slow, it caused the space around it to change and destroy all the restrictions. The ground rippled and the spatial lock was broken. Damn it! Xing Jin bombarded the body of the giant phantom worm again and again. Although his offensive power was lacking, that was only in comparison to the other two master gods and his defense. No matter how weak Xing Jin's offensive power was, he had surpassed the peak Yuan Venerate and reached the threshold of an almighty. Although his repeated attacks couldn't kill the giant phantom worm, they made its defense weaker and weaker. Die! Xing Jin God's power erupted, and the golden fist shadow finally shattered the giant gloom worm. Streams of mist condensed, and the surrounding space seemed to have fallen into a spatial maze. At this time, Xing Jin God's expression was extremely ugly. He realized that he had made a complete miscalculation. Lin Feng wasn't in the body of the giant phantom worm. Even though the space was shrouded in fog, Lin Feng's aura had completely disappeared. During the time when he was attacking the nether mirage worm, he had completely disappeared. Ah! Xing Jin's face twisted with rage as he roared. A dignified Aeon god had actually been played around with in the palms of a human emperor. If he wanted to fight, he could fight, and if he wanted to leave, he could leave. Even now, he didn't know where Lin Feng had gone. However, he sensed that Lin Feng was no longer in the entire great Samsara realm. Creating a diversion, Lin Feng took advantage of his lack of attack power and successfully retreated. Damn it! Xing Jin's eyes widened in anger. He had been hesitating for a long time, waiting for a long time, but in the end Lin Feng still managed to escape. It was as if he had been ruthlessly slapped in the face, leaving behind a striking imprint of 5 fingers. It seemed like he had won this battle, but he had actually lost miserably. He didn't even know where Lin Feng had gone. Had he escaped from the billion-wheel origin realm, escaped from the Rinnegan Eye, or entered the Golden Eye Samsara? Kongwu! Xing Jin roared hysterically. Inform Eternity immediately to send reinforcements. Quick, send reinforcements. Search every inch of the million-wheel origin realm. We can't let Lin Feng escape. Yes, my lord, Grand Eternity God Kongwu replied. Whoosh! The eternal god Xing Jin's face was ashen as he sped towards Golden Eye reincarnation. At present, he had no other choice. Losing face was a small matter, but letting Lin Feng escape was a big matter. Especially since he had just fought with Lin Feng, He clearly knew how terrifying this little guy Huang Zun was. Once he had the chance to escape, then what awaited Universe 7's godly inquisition would be a catastrophe. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to keep Lin Feng in the 100 million wheels origin realm. Shua! Xing Jin instantly entered the golden eye samsara. At this moment, he was incomparably calm. In Xing Jin's opinion, although Lin Feng had used a special treasure to escape, the possibility of him leaving the 100 million wheels origin realm was very small. This treasure was at least at the level of a supreme chaos treasure, and it was extremely rare. There was a 99% chance that Lin Feng had either entered the 100 million wheels origin realm through Golden Eye reincarnation, or escaped through the Rinnegan and attempted to leave the 100 million wheels origin realm through the Silver Eye. The former was to enter the 100 million wheels origin realm and slowly search for Lin Feng. The latter was to inform Eternity God Kongwu that there was no way Lin Feng could escape once he entered the 100 million wheels origin realm. Regardless of which possibility it was, he wouldn't give Lin Feng another chance. This Huang Zun brat was too dangerous. Once he was given enough time, the consequences would be unimaginable. He would never repeat the humiliation he had suffered in the Yellow Springs origin realm. You can't escape, Lin Feng. Xing Jin's roar echoed throughout the 100 million wheels origin realm. At the moment, Lin Feng was in the Golden Eye reincarnation. It was very similar to the Silver Eye reincarnation. Reincarnation after reincarnation was a test of life and death. If a cultivator's willpower wasn't strong enough or pure enough, they would easily be trapped and their soul would be imprisoned forever. The Golden Eye reincarnation was the final hurdle to enter the 100 million wheels origin realm. At the same time, it was also a benchmark for countless Yuan venerate cultivators to test their willpower. Being able to pass the Golden Eye reincarnation meant that one's willpower had already reached the threshold of an almighty. Therefore, cultivators who could enter the 100 million wheels origin realm weren't ordinary. It's worth exchanging a chance to fight Eternity God Xing Jin for another flame. Lin Feng's state of mind wasn't affected at all as he went through the many reincarnations. He could even divert his attention to do other things. The Golden Eye reincarnation, which could be passed at the threshold of an almighty, was just an ordinary obstacle for Lin Feng. Lin Feng had already thought of a countermeasure before the battle with Eternity God Xing Jin. He would fight with all his might. It would be great if he could severely injure or even kill Eternity God Xing Jin. If he couldn't, he could at least ensure his own safety. This battle had indeed not met his expectations, but Lin Feng hadn't come out empty-handed. At the very least, he had clearly understood how strong Eternity God Xing Jin was. How far was he from Eternity God Xing Jin? 2 points. One is that my internal universe has to become stronger. The other is that I have to find a primal chaos ultimate treasure that can impact my origin spirit. Neither of these were easy. However, this was the only feasible method he could think of at the moment. Eternity God Xing Jin was really formidable. This was only in the Hongmeng Sea. If he had been in the origin universe and had been bestowed with the sky path, his strength would have been at least several times stronger than it was now. Whoosh, whoosh. Reincarnation after reincarnation cycle passed by. Regardless of whether it was an illusion or a direct mental influence, nothing could obstruct Lin Feng at all. It was as if he was riding the wind and breaking the waves in the boundless sea. Rays of golden light flashed past his eyes and his surroundings changed instantly. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt his heartbeat. A familiar call was heard once again. It was right in front of him in this reincarnation cycle. But, reaching out his hand, Lin Feng's grab seemed to have penetrated all the reincarnations. Layers of golden light wrapped around it. It was a beautiful golden bead that emitted pure energy. It was perfectly integrated with the surrounding environment as if it had been nurtured in this Golden Eye reincarnation cycle. Hongmeng fruit? Lin Feng was slightly surprised. He hadn't seen anything like it in the Silver Eye reincarnation. Why did it suddenly appear in the Golden Eye reincarnation this time? It seems to be related to the heart force. Lin Feng was also bold. He directly swallowed it. In an instant, surging energy gathered. The city of will vibrated loudly. The Hongmeng aura flowed and wrapped around the golden bead. In an instant, it merged with the heart force. Whoosh! The heart force in his body seemed to have changed form. Its energy surged and instantly rose. The vigorous energy attacked the heart force. Lin Feng felt the changes in the heart force and vaguely saw the appearance of the heart force heavenly path. It seemed to be within reach. A pleasant surprise. A golden light appeared in front of him. It was the exit of the reincarnation cycle. It was the way out of the Golden Eye reincarnation. Feeling the call getting stronger and stronger, Lin Feng stepped out of the golden light without hesitation. His figure slowly disappeared into the reincarnation cycle. Chapter 2788. As expected, I've entered an independent space. When Lin Feng had escaped through the hidden skeleton, he had considered whether to leave through the Rinnegan or enter the Golden Eye. One was to retreat and the other was to advance. If he retreated, he might not necessarily be faster than Xingjin. Moreover, there were many prime gods in the adjudicator of Universe 7. Xingjin could have the other prime gods wait at the entrance. It was easy to enter the Million-Wheel Origin realm, but difficult to leave. Rather than passively hiding in the Great Reincarnation realm, he might as well take the risk and enter the Golden Eye. Firstly, there was a call from the depths of the Million-Wheel Origin realm. Secondly, with the precedent set by the Silver Eye realm, it was very likely that the Golden Eye realm was within the Golden Eye realm. As expected, what an astonishing amount of perfect origin core force! Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly, and his lips curled into a smile. It wasn't because of the abundant perfect origin core force here, but because he could clearly sense the existence of perfect origin core force. At this moment, the heavenly Tao of heart force in his internal universe was quietly transforming. His own origin core force had transformed into perfect origin core force after consuming that golden Hongmeng fruit. Is it mine alone? Or is it the reward of the Golden Eye realm? Lin Feng wasn't sure. But the result was undoubtedly good. In truth, Lin Feng wasn't an exception. As long as one fulfilled 3 conditions, any heart force cultivator who entered the Golden Eye realm would be able to obtain the sacred heart fruit. First, they had to pass the Golden Eye realm perfectly. Second, they had to attempt the Golden Eye realm for the first time. Third, they had to be a heart force cultivator. The third condition wasn't too harsh. As long as a heart force cultivators will reach the level of a major power, they would be able to obtain the sacred heart fruit. However, 99% of heart force cultivators who met the requirements already had perfect origin core force. The sacred heart fruit was just the icing on the cake. But to Lin Feng, it was a timely help. Advancing to the next level was a piece of cake. Lin Feng's internal universe was already enough to accommodate perfect origin core force. In addition, Lin Feng's will was extremely strong, and he was already prepared for everything. As his perfect origin core force transformed, the Qin Emperor's origin heart began to stir, as though some seal was about to be broken. I can control it. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. The advancement of his perfect origin heart force allowed him to finally drive the will city of Emperor Qin's origin heart. This vast and majestic heaven city had a tyrannical power that could suppress everything, and it seemed to be sealing something. Hua, Qin Duan's heart seemed to have cracked. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. As the city of will soared into the sky, countless pieces of information appeared in his mind, including the way to control the city of will, the way to use the 9 Hells' baleful aura, and even the information about the Qin Larch armor. The city of will has 2 forms, trap and smash. The 9 Hells' baleful Qi has 2 abilities, pierce and seep. 4 abilities, 4 methods. Heart force cultivators usually developed in a balanced manner. They used their heart force to strengthen their close combat abilities or the power of their primordial spirits. The four abilities of the Qin Emperor's heart force could all be combined with their primordial spirits. The trap of the City of Will was used to suppress and control. It could be combined with illusions or origin soul attack. The smash of the City of Will was used to attack one's primordial spirit. It could be combined with controlling attacks or origin C attack. The Nine Hells Fiendish Cheese Pierce was a piercing ability. It focused origin energy on a single point and could be used in conjunction with a control-type attack or origin soul attack. The Seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Chi was used to permeate and spread influence. It could be combined with illusions or origin C attack. So to unlock the seal of the Qin Emperor's origin heart, one needs to reach perfect origin heart force. Lin Feng finally understood. No wonder he could sense the uniqueness of the Qin Emperor's origin heart but couldn't control its abilities. Its requirements weren't high. However, in the origin universe where the heart force heavenly Tao didn't exist, unlocking it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Instead, it was him who had accidentally activated it. And this was only a part of the Qin Emperor's origin heart's power. It's really as Senior Yellow Spring said. There's an ancient inheritance hidden in the Qin Emperor's heart. Lin Feng could vaguely sense it before, but now he could see it clearly. There was a door to the heart at the center of the 5 stars in his body. The information in his mind clearly stated that as long as he gathered all 5 parts of the Qin Emperor armor set, he could open the door to the heart and obtain the Qin Emperor's inheritance. 5 parts. The Qin Emperor's origin heart is the source, and the other 4 parts are supplementary. Lin Feng could vaguely sense the location of the other 4 parts. Even if he was in the 100 million Luan origin worlds, he could still sense their location. Every part, in addition to its own abilities, can unlock special abilities when combined with the Qin Emperor's origin heart. Hongmeng Origin Objects. The Qin Emperor armor set was a true Hongmeng origin object. All 5 parts were at the level of supreme chaos treasures. The Qin Emperor's origin heart, in particular, was at the top of the supreme chaos treasures. However, the other 5 parts weren't bad either. Their abilities were at the level of supreme chaos treasures. Moreover, as long as they were combined with the Qin Emperor's origin heart, their special abilities would reach the level of Hongmeng origin objects. And if he gathered all 5 parts of the Qin Emperor armor set, not only would he obtain the ancient inheritance, but he would also obtain the strongest power of the Qin Emperor armor set. Amazing! Too amazing! Lin Feng sighed. Although Senior Yellow Spring had obtained the Qin Emperor armor set back then, he could only use the basic abilities of the other 4 parts. He couldn't unleash the true power of the Qin Emperor armor set because he didn't have the perfect origin heart force and couldn't control the Qin Emperor's origin heart. Therefore, Senior Yellow Spring had left behind a message that the ancient inheritance was hidden in the Qin Emperor armor set. What a pity! If Senior Yellow Spring had fully mastered the Qin Emperor armor set back then, he might not have died at the hands of Universe 7's godly inquisition. Lin Feng sighed. Fate was making fools of people. Senior Yellow Spring had clearly mastered the power and had the ability to save his life, but he lacked luck. But now, he had obtained this luck. Although it's not a Chaos Cardinal treasure that can attack the origin soul, the Qin Emperor's origin heart will only be stronger, much stronger. Lin Feng carefully savored all the information about the Qin Emperor's origin heart. This was a treasure with many functions. Most treasures had a special characteristic. The more abilities they had, the more useful they would be, and the weaker their individual power would be. But the Qin Emperor's origin heart was different. Not only did it have many functions, but each of them was top-notch. He didn't need to master too many. As long as he could master the smash of the City of Will or the seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Aura, combined with the attack of the Origin Sea, he would be able to unleash extraordinary effects. including close combat, the City of Will and the Nine Hells' baleful aura could perfectly complement it. Heart Force cultivators used the heart as the source, combining the physical body's origin strength and soul origin strength into a perfect body. Wait for me, Xingjin, God of Eternity. The next time we meet, let's compete again. Lin Feng was full of confidence. Chapter 2789. In the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. Father, Taiyufu looked around in shock and spread his arms in disbelief. It was as if he was dreaming, yet the dream felt so real that it felt as if he was experiencing it himself. That feeling of death, which he had never felt before, was especially profound. Why aren't you thanking my lord? King Taidi said expressionlessly. However, his heart was bleeding. The price of reviving a Yuan Venerate was extremely expensive. Even though he was the commander of 13 corps and an extraordinary almighty, the huge expenditure had caused the wealth he had accumulated over countless eras to go up in smoke. However, at the very least, he had revived Taiyufu. Wealth could be accumulated again, but there was only one son. My lord? Taiyufu was stunned. His memories were being reorganized. He had returned to the moment when he had been killed by Lin Feng in the 100 million wheel origin realms. He was instantly enlightened and woke up. He had died. However, he had been revived. Taiyufu, thank you for reviving me, my lord. Taiyufu knelt on the ground, not daring to breathe too loudly. Someone that his father, King Taidi, addressed as my lord, was naturally a Taichu Yuan general. He was a supreme being at the level of a universe ruler. Only such an existence had the heaven-defying ability to revive him. Taiyufu is very grateful for your kindness, my lord. King Taidi bowed respectfully. The majestic figure on the throne was as tall as the sky. His furry hands were placed on the strange beast on the platform. His voice was as loud as a bell. Tai Yaofu, the one who killed you, is an emperor of the child universe. Yes, my lord. Although Taiyufu was embarrassed to say it, he didn't dare hide it. Huang Zun? Huang Zun from the subuniverse? King Taidi's eyes widened in disbelief. He knew Taiyufu's strength very well. Although Taiyufu wasn't considered the best among cultivators of the same level in the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe, Taiyufu's strength was considered decent under his guidance. It would be pardonable if Taiyufu had been killed by another Yuan Venerate powerhouse. However, Taiyufu had been killed by Huang Zun? Moreover, it was Huang Zun from the sub-universe. How is this possible? King Taidi's lips trembled slightly, and his brows furrowed deeply. Although it was inconceivable, he knew that the Prime General wouldn't lie. After all, the Prime General would obtain a portion of Taidi's memories before his death when he resurrected Taidi. Most importantly, Tyler admitted it himself. Go get him, Tai. His voice carried a hint of indisputable authority. The transcendent being on the throne had an imposing aura, and his voice echoed in the huge palace. Yes, my lord. King Taidi bowed. Within the origin realm, Lin Feng was currently cultivating. Following the transformation of the perfect source heart force, his body automatically absorbed the perfect source heart force of the golden eye world to strengthen himself. Lin Feng did not purposely absorb the perfect source heart force of the golden eye world. Once the perfect source heart force of the golden eye world was completely absorbed, it would disappear. Silver Eye's world was like this. There was only one chance. Time is limited. I have to master the power of the Qin Emperor's origin heart before the perfect origin heart energy in the golden eye world is exhausted. Lin Feng was also helpless. Others could not wait to absorb the perfect source heart energy faster and improve their cultivation faster. Now, he was the one who wanted to absorb it slower. Another contradiction was that the Qin Emperor's origin heart was a heart energy treasure, and the source of its energy was the perfect source heart force. In other words, whether it was the smash of the City of Will or the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi, he had to master the use of the perfect source heart force. Using the perfect source heart force would inevitably consume it. If he consumed it, he would absorb the perfect source heart force of the golden eye world to replenish it, which would naturally accelerate the disappearance of the golden eye world. But there was no other way. The golden eye world was a cultivation world for the perfect source heart force. This was the purpose of its existence. There was no need to be too deliberate. He would do what he needed to do. Increasing his combat strength to the greatest extent within a limited time was what Lin Feng was best at. He had experienced this too many times. Two things at the same time. Lin Feng refined the illusion-type peak chaos treasure while cultivating to master the Qin Emperor's origin heart. Mind cultivators were very strong, and they were proficient in both close combat and long-range attack. However, they had a weakness. They could not exist independently. In order to unleash their strength, they had to combine physical attacks or origin soul control. Although there was also willpower impact, the Qin Emperor's origin heart did not have this ability now. The smash of the City of Will and the seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Qi can both be used in conjunction with the origin C impact. The former strengthens the power of the origin C impact, while the latter increases the versatility of the origin C impact. There is no difference between the two. Lin Feng was very clear about the difference between the two. In addition to the characteristics of their abilities, the smash of the City of Will and the seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Qi had different uses when dealing with different soul defense treasures. For example, if the enemy's soul defense treasures focused on toughness and had a perfect defense, the smash of the City of Will would be the most effective. If the enemy's soul defense treasures were tough and had many defensive characteristics and support, the seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Qi would be the most effective. If he had enough time, he would naturally master both abilities and use different combinations for different opponents. However, time was limited. Whether it was the smash of the City of Will or the seep of the Nine Hells Baleful Qi, their power had reached the level of a supreme chaos treasure. Lin Feng was not confident that he could cultivate either to phenomenal success, let alone perfect it. When it came to a choice, he had to choose. My main opponent is still Eternal God Xingjin. His soul defense true treasure. Lin Feng had fought Eternal God Xingjin before, so he was very familiar with his soul defense true treasure. Pure defense. Then I'll cultivate the first form of the City of Will, smash. Lin Feng made the decision decisively. The perfect origin heart force in the world of the Golden Eye was limited and could only be used to its fullest extent. Moreover, there was another benefit to cultivating the smash of the City of Will. His main attack methods other than the origin C impact were controlling attack. The smash of the City of Will could also complement and increase its power. Most of the great origin soul fruits had been consumed. After leaving the world of the Golden Eye, he would definitely go through countless battles. It would be good if he could obtain the great origin soul fruits by then, but he had to be prepared for the worst. Moreover, I have a ultimate chaos treasure of the object manipulation element. I should be able to completely refine it while I'm in the world of the Golden Eye. Feeling the majestic power of the world of the Golden Eye, Lin Feng quickly entered a state of cultivation. He clearly knew that it would not be so easy to escape this time. Xingjin God had not been able to kill him this time, so the next storm would only be more violent. But at the same time, as long as they could not kill him, he would become stronger. Stronger and stronger. Let's see who will emerge victorious in the end. Lin Feng became stronger when facing a strong opponent. He had a heart that did not admit defeat. Since he dared to come to the 100 million wheels origin realm, he had naturally made the best preparations. He had never been afraid. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2790. Father, the Lord means. Tai Yaofu couldn't help but ask as they left the palace. The Lord's meaning isn't something we can guess. There's no need to ask. Just do as he says. The king of Titan looked solemn as he said, "Tell me everything that happened that day. Don't hide anything. Tell me everything." "Yes, father." Tai Yaofu had already recovered all his memories, so he remembered everything clearly. The defeat he had suffered that day was unforgettable. He had grown up under his father's wings since he was a child, so he had never experienced such a defeat. As he spoke, Tai Yinfu was filled with hatred for Lin Feng, who had killed him. Not only had Lin Feng caused him to lose face, but he also knew that his father had paid a heavy price to revive him. A human from a sub-universe is actually so strong. According to what you said, the power of his source C has already reached the level of a peak Yuan venerate or even higher. The king of Titan pondered for a moment before adding, "Strength is easy to obtain, but an internal universe is hard to find. This kid is Huang Zun, but his internal universe is already comparable to yours. If he doesn't have a special treasure, then what is it, father?" Tai Yaofu was even more curious. "Nothing." The king of Titan understood a little. "Go back and get ready immediately. Wait for my notice and we will set off for the 100 million wheel origin realm together." Tai Yaofu's breathing quickened as his eyes lit up. "Father, are we going to kill that kid?" "The Lord wants him alive," the king of Titan replied coldly. Lin Feng didn't know that he was being targeted. However, even if he did, Lin Feng wouldn't have cared. There wasn't much difference between having one more enemy and one less enemy. At this moment, he was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. The Qin Emperor's origin heart was indeed a treasure. Its ability was also top-notch among the ultimate chaos treasures. However, the difficulty of cultivating it was also top-notch. Lin Feng wasn't a mental cultivator and had only just come into contact with this aspect, so it would be difficult for him to comprehend it. Fortunately, I chose the City of Will's smash. When he started cultivating, Lin Feng discovered that the ability of a mental cultivator was multifaceted. It wasn't just related to one's source soul, it was also closely related to one's origin source body. Actually, it was normal. The strength of a mind cultivator was determined by the combination of the two. They played the role of support and commander. Combat strength was like this, and so was cultivation. Mental cultivation was like the military advisor of an army, while the origin soul and origin body were the two armies on the left and right. Without these two armies, no matter how strong a mental cultivation was, it would be difficult for it to display its power. The Qin Emperor's origin heart had two forms of power, which were the City of Will and the Nine Hells' baleful Qi. Among them, the City of Will focused more on power, while the Nine Hells' baleful Qi focused more on skill. If it was the Source Soul, the most important thing to control the City of Will was the Source Soul's Source C itself, while the most important thing to control the Nine Hells' baleful Qi was the Source Soul's ability to control it. For Lin Feng, it was naturally easier to control the City of Will. In addition, controlling his physical body's origin energy was one of Lin Feng's weaknesses. It took a lot of effort to control the Nine Hells' baleful Qi. Heart cultivators have two sides of the same coin. I use my origin soul to improve my mental cultivation. Although I can't use it with my origin energy to make my cultivation progress twice as fast, I can still use it to improve my mental cultivation. Later, as my mental cultivation level increases, I can use mental cultivation to improve my origin energy and source body. It will be twice as fast with half the effort. But then again, it's not easy to control the City of Will's smash. Just holding up the City of Will took a lot of effort. Controlling the City of Will to smash required countless experiments and control. It was like waving a saber. A soft saber or a random saber technique without any order was no threat at all. The main reason is that I don't have enough perfect source heart force. Lin Feng felt that although he had transformed his perfect source heart force, he was still like a chick that had just hatched from an egg. He was still immature. After all, the Qin Emperor's origin heart was a top-notch chaos cardinal treasure. In order to perfectly unleash its power, not only did it require control and comprehension, but it also required a solid foundation. Let's try using the origin sea's energy. If one path didn't work, he would try another. The perfect source heart force was a form of support. Since he didn't use close-range attacks, he could fuse it with the origin sea's energy before unleashing it. He didn't have enough perfect source heart force, but he had enough origin sea's energy. Moreover, doing so would save him one step in cultivation. It was just that he lacked flexibility. Let's cultivate like this. Lin Feng gradually entered a good state. He sensed that the perfect source heart force in the Golden Eye world was being consumed very quickly, much faster than in the Silver Eye world. Because he was cultivating the City of Will's smash. He was constantly consuming perfect source heart force. I have to hurry. Lin Feng felt the pressure. If he couldn't master the City of Will's smash in the Golden Eye world, it would be equivalent to opening the secret of the Qin Emperor's origin heart for nothing. He didn't know what would happen after the Golden Eye reincarnation. However, there was one thing that he was certain of, and that was, the Seventh Universe's godly inquisition must have laid an inescapable net waiting for him. This was especially true for Xingjin Great Eternity God. Previously, he had allowed him to slip away right under his nose. 100 million wheel grave. Damn it! Where did that guy go? An angry roar reverberated through this cold and dark tomb. Eternal God Xingjin had an ugly complexion. One of the reasons for this was that he hadn't received any news about Lin Feng. The more he searched, the more anxious he became, and the more anxious his mood became. On the other hand, he had just been attacked by a Taichu cultivator. Xingjin Great Eternity God didn't have any advantage here. No matter how good his treasures were, the internal universe of a peak Yuan Venerate Taichu cultivator suppressed him. Plus, no cultivator who could enter the 100 million wheel tomb was weak. Bah! Xingjin Great Eternity God spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm and regained his cold expression. He was best at defense and preserving his life. Therefore, he had only been injured in the previous battle. However, he hadn't been injured in a very long time in the endless epochs of the Origin universe. This time, he had been injured entirely because of Lin Feng. If he dares to enter the 100 million wheel tomb, there will be nothing left of him. Xingjin Great Eternity God didn't believe that Lin Feng could survive in the 100 million wheel tomb. Even he wasn't confident. If this was the Origin universe, I would have killed every one of these fellows that came. Xingjin Great Eternity God was indignant. In the Origin universe, he could even compete with Almighties. How could he be afraid of these peak Yuan Venerates? Forever has also arrived. He is in the great Samsara realm, and I am in the 100 million wheel tomb. As long as Lin Feng is not dead, we will find him. Xingjin Great Eternity God's sharp eyes were filled with murderous intent. Lin Feng had escaped from him previously, which had been a great humiliation. He wouldn't give Lin Feng a second chance. Absolutely not. Chapter 2791. I did it. Lin Feng was overjoyed. In the Golden Eyes world, he had used the City of Will again and again without caring about the consumption of his perfect origin heart force. Although he had only reached greater mastery and had not reached perfection, it was enough. Emperor Qin's origin heart is indeed a top-tier chaos treasure. Although it's only at greater mastery, the City of Will's smash is already comparable to an ordinary chaos treasure. If it reaches perfection, its power will be absolutely astonishing. Lin Feng also wanted to cultivate it to perfection, but it was not his time. More than 80% of the perfect origin heart force in the Golden Eyes world had been consumed. The remaining 20% was not enough for him to continue cultivating. Besides, Lin Feng wanted to leave some time for other things. Greater mastery was enough. During this period of time, he had released the Endless Sea, which was a peak cultivation-type chaos treasure. His origin sea had been constantly expanding. Previously, Lin Feng had not been able to transform his perfect origin sea because of his insufficient control over his origin soul. Now, however, he could transform it. I haven't reached my limit yet. Lin Feng could sense that this was not the limit of his origin sea's expansion. Although he could complete the transformation with his perfect origin heart force, this was equivalent to squeezing out his own potential. Lin Feng did not want to do this. Even if he was surrounded by enemies and danger, he did not want to compromise. If he wanted to do something, he would do it to the best of his ability. Also, with the City of Will's smash, my origin sea's impact will be enough to break Xing Jin's soul defense. Lin Feng was very confident that he had a chaos treasure. This was also why he had never thought of transforming his perfect origin sea. He still had the right to be willful. There seemed to be little time left in the Golden Eyes world, but there was still a lot left. As long as I don't continue to consume my perfect origin heart force, the remaining 20% of perfect origin heart force will give me at least twice as much time as before. Soon, I can complete the refinement before the time is up. Lin Feng had already refined the peak illusion-type chaos treasure. After that, he had been refining the only chaos treasure that could control objects. Lin Feng walked deeper and deeper into the origin soul Dao. He was involved in many kinds of things. But wasn't he a mind cultivator? He was proficient in everything. He was flexible and had no weaknesses. He could deal with different kinds of enemies according to the best situation. 10 Desires Calamity. Lin Feng began to cultivate the illusion-type pinnacle chaos true treasure. There were many types of illusions, such as attacking illusions, confusing illusions, attacking attacks, and so on. The 10 Desires Tribulation was a pinnacle chaos true treasure that focused on pure illusions. It attacked the enemy with desire. 10 desires, 10 wills, 10 killer moves. Using illusions didn't require a strong control over one's source spirit. The power of the illusions depended on the strength of one's source spirit, and the key was one's willpower. All of Tai Yaofu's treasures had been carefully prepared by his father, the king of Tai Yaofu. They were all peak chaos treasures that were used to prevent Tai Yaofu from being ambushed and give him an advantage in battle. Hidden Raven was a life-saving treasure. Tai Yinfu was a Yuan venerate with one thought and wasn't good at close combat. Thus, he needed a supreme treasure that could protect his physical body. The attack-type Phantom Spider Hand and 10 Desires Tribulation both had the power of illusions and willpower attack. Because Tai Yaofu was good at illusions and his willpower wasn't bad, these treasures were also compatible. However, they had all fallen into the hands of Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng didn't have much experience or understanding of illusions, Lin Feng also had a perfect source spirit and an abundant source sea. Most importantly, Lin Feng's willpower was much stronger than Tai Yaofu's. The willpower of an almighty. Illusions. Actually, it's not that difficult. After cultivating the primordial heart of Qin Emperor, which was a top-grade supreme treasure of the chaos, Lin Feng found it much easier to cultivate another peak-grade treasure of the chaos. Especially with his strong willpower, he could master illusion-type treasures with twice the result with half the effort. Although it was impossible to reach perfection in a limited time, it wasn't a problem to reach the level of great success. Willpower combined with illusions is enough to increase the power of the illusions. Although the lower limit of illusions is low, the upper limit is much higher. It's often very effective against enemies with weak willpower and strong desires. 10 Desires Tribulation, 1 tribulation at a time. Lin Feng cultivated in the golden-eyed world without any worries. Universe 7's Godly Inquisition had been searching for Lin Feng's whereabouts. Whether it was Xingjin God of Eternity or Eternal God of Eternity, they couldn't find any trace of Lin Feng. The entire millionth wheel origin world had been turned upside down, but Lin Feng seemed to have suddenly disappeared. If the will of the heavenly Tao didn't know that Lin Feng was still alive, Xing Jin would have thought that Lin Feng had died. Where is this kid hiding? Eternity God Xing Jin couldn't understand this at all. If Lin Feng was still in the 100,000,000 Wheels origin realm, then there was no way they wouldn't have been able to find him. Even Eternity God Xing Jin had explored half of the 100,000,000 Wheels tomb, which was an incredibly dangerous place, and he had even been injured in the process. However, there was still no news of Lin Feng. Xing Jin frowned as he looked at the endless depths of the million-wheel tomb. He thought of a possibility but shook his head. Impossible. Given his strength, it's impossible for him to enter the innermost part. If he couldn't enter, how could Lin Feng? Besides, what can he do even if he enters the innermost part of the million-wheel tomb? What for? Could it be that he wants to obtain the treasures left behind by the million-wheel master? Xing Jin laughed self-deprecatingly. Although there were legends that the fated ones could obtain the treasures left behind by the million-wheel master, and there were also legends that there was another world inside the million-wheel tomb, no cultivator had ever seen or obtained it. In Xing Jin's opinion, this was just a rumor that had been passed around. Even if there were treasures or immortal lands, they would have been dug up after countless epochs. Although Almighties couldn't enter the million-wheel tomb, many genius Yuan venerates had been born in the Taichu origin chaos universe, so it was normal for them to be comparable to ordinary Almighties. There were also plenty of top-notch Almighties, and many of them were comparable to extraordinary Almighties or even pinnacle Almighties. Damn it! Xing Jin gritted his teeth as he looked away from the depths of the million-wheel tomb. He had never seen a kid who could hide so well. He had clearly set up an inescapable net, but Lin Feng always managed to find a gap to escape every time. There was no other way now. He could only continue searching. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh. A black phantom flew back from afar and turned into a Hongming stream of air before disappearing. A black fluorescent light flickered on Lin Feng's palm like a sinister spider baring its sharp fangs. The misty illusion glass had a different kind of charm. It was the ultimate chaos treasure of the object control system, the phantom spider hand, which Lin Feng had completely refined. It's time to leave. Although Lin Feng couldn't bear to part with these quiet days of cultivation, the energy of the Golden Eye realm was already extremely thin and on the verge of collapse. A calling feeling arose in his heart once again. Pop! Pop! The Golden Eye realm slowly shattered as Lin Feng's fighting spirit soared. Soon, a bloodbath was about to take place. I will definitely be the one to survive. Lin Feng stepped out of the Golden Eye realm resolutely. Genius 1-second memory address. Mobile version website. Chapter 2792. What a strong calling. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He left the world of the Golden Eye and entered a new world. This was neither the Great Reincarnation Realm nor the Small Reincarnation Realm. It was a sealed space. In the Great Reincarnation Realm, he could see the boundless void and feel the vastness of the world. However, he couldn't feel it here. It was heavy, stifling, and palpitating. This was an area that would make one's heart tremble. It was a pitch-black and silent tomb. Crack! Lin Feng stepped on a corpse. After countless eras, it had already become loose. The tomb-like place was full of ghosts and mysteries. It seemed to hide a terrifying secret. This should be the deepest part of the 100,000,000 Wheels origin world. It's different from the outside. It's a world beyond the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Lin Feng had heard from Little Ling that the 100,000,000 Wheels origin world was a land of primordial chaos that had existed since the primordial era. Later on, spiritual consciousness had appeared, and a connate great expert, the Lord of 100,000,000 Wheels, was born. After that, the Master of 100,000,000 Wheels died. Although the 100,000,000 Wheels origin world was the Master of 100,000,000 Wheels internal universe, it was a part of the Hongmeng Sea. It was protected by the Hongmeng energy and didn't collapse. It could still maintain the operation of the Hongmeng nomological laws. It formed an inherent cycle, which was the small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm. Therefore, he could feel the Hongmeng energy and the majestic Hongmeng Sea in the small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm. This was because they were part of the Hongmeng Sea and were connected. However, this wasn't the case here. This was a broken internal universe, the core of the master of 100 million wheels. Is it because the Khanate Almighty is protected by the Hongmeng Sea, so his internal universe can remain intact even after he dies? Or is it because the external small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm form a stable cycle that provides sufficient energy? Lin Feng walked through the broken walls. He could feel the traces of time. Everything here had a long history. He followed the call and gradually went deeper. The call became stronger and stronger. In the small reincarnation realm, he could barely feel it. In the great reincarnation realm, he could clearly feel it. But here, he didn't need to feel it. It was as if it was ringing in his ears and speaking to him. Cluck! Lin Feng's heart tightened. His brows furrowed slightly as the Origin Sea's energy condensed. Although he still hadn't sensed the enemy, his intuition told him that a powerful opponent was staring at him. It was an ability that had been honed through countless battles, a warning in his heart. As the level of his mental cultivation increased, Lin Feng's intuition also became sharper. However, that feeling only lasted for a moment before it disappeared. He left. Lin Feng did not doubt his own senses. Just now, there was definitely a powerful opponent spying on him. However, he did not know why that opponent suddenly left. Whether it was in the small world of samsara or the big world of samsara, Lin Feng had encountered too many such attacks. Seeing that he was Huang Zun, they were unscrupulous and bullied him. After all, the gap between the two stages was too huge. It seems that the cultivators here are more careful. It was best to avoid this kind of battle if possible. Although Lin Feng wanted to test his current combat strength, the number of Great Origin Soulfruits was already quite low. Moreover, Universe 7's Godly Inquisition's Great Eternity God could appear at any time, so it was best to preserve his strength as much as possible. It's actually Huang Zun? Which of the top 100 cultivators on the Huang Zun list is he? A man with 2 sabers and a single horn on his head had scales all over his face. His eyes were flickering as his figure constantly changed. He was a Peak Yuan Venerate and even stronger than Sacred Gold's Great Eternity God. He was a Taichu cultivator, Pai Sa. If he had encountered a Peak Yuan Venerate, Pai Sa would not have hesitated at all and would have attacked immediately. However, he had encountered Huang Zun, which made Pai Sa very wary. This was different from the small world of samsara and the big world of samsara. In the tomb of 100 million samsara, the lower the cultivation level of the cultivator one encountered, the more dangerous it was. Such a cultivator would definitely have very terrifying abilities. They would either have extraordinary strength, extraordinary treasures, or an extremely powerful backer. Regardless of which one it was, it would be very troublesome. For example, the number 1 cultivator on the Huang Zun list, Little Hong Saber Rui, had the combat strength of an almighty. Thus, he did not even have the confidence to protect himself against Pai Sa. In fact, the top 100 cultivators on the Huang Zun list all had the combat strength of an almighty. To enter the 100 million wheel tomb, one had to pass through the Golden Eye Samsara. Furthermore, everyone knew how dangerous the 100 million wheel tomb was. Even Peak Yuan Venerates would have a slim chance of survival if they entered. Therefore, Huang Zun daring to enter was very abrupt and frightening. Pai Sa naturally would not take such a risk. There was a sudden tremor in the depths of the 100 million wheel tomb. Even those outside could clearly feel the aftermath of the tremor. It seems like something has happened. Pai Sa's eyes flickered. Could it be a sign that a treasure has been unearthed? If so, then I'm in luck. Crack, crack, Pai Sa did not hide his ambition. Since he dared to take the risk to enter the 100 million-wheel tomb, he naturally would not miss such an opportunity. What's going on? Sacred Gold was surprised. He had not found Lin Feng, but he had encountered a rare tremor in the 100 million-wheel tomb. Sacred Gold was different from Pai Sa. Although he had come out of his own universe, he was the master eternal god who ruled the land. Thus, he was much more experienced than Pai Sa. Although Sacred Gold had not experienced the strange tremors in the 100 million-wheel tomb, he had heard of them before. Every time there was a strange tremor, a treasure would appear. Sometimes there would be many treasures. There had even been a set of Hongmeng source items that appeared once. For a peak Yuan venerate, this was like a sweet dew from the heavens. Below his feet, there were continuous tremors that appeared from time to time. This is a good opportunity. Sacred Gold shuddered. If Lin Feng was in the 100 million-wheel tomb, then he would definitely head to the source of the tremors. After all, this was also a heaven-sent opportunity for Lin Feng. Having a clear target was much better than searching all over the huge 100 million-wheel tomb. There were many restricted areas in the 100 million-wheel tomb that Sacred Gold did not dare barge into. Thus, he could only search in areas that he was familiar with. In Sacred Gold's opinion, this might be the reason he had not been able to find Lin Feng. Swish! Like a sharp arrow, Xing Jin's great Aeon God sped through the air, his speed extremely fast. This time there was a chance. Every time there is a tremor, there seems to be a stronger calling. At the moment, Lin Feng was carefully traveling through the 100 million-wheel tomb. Although he had not encountered any other cultivators, this place did not feel ordinary. It was completely different from the great Samsara realm. There were traps everywhere. Just now, Lin Feng had discovered a place where a small storm gathered. There seemed to be something hidden in the storm vortex, but the power of the storm was too terrifying. Given his physical defense, he reckoned that he would be completely torn apart if he got close to the storm. This was normal. After all, this was the internal universe of a Xiantian Almighty. Is this a treasure left behind by the 100 million-wheel master? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. His intuition told him that the calling and the continuous tremors before him were connected by an invisible thread. Let's go take a look. Chapter 2793. What is this? Lin Feng, who had been traveling, suddenly stopped and looked ahead curiously. It was a wall covered in golden ripples. The ripples flowed like a stream, and in the middle of this flowing stream, there was an eye that was mixed with gold and silver. It was filled with perfect origin heart force. The energy is between the silver eye and the golden eye. They seem to be of the same type. This can't be the eye of reincarnation, right? Lin Feng shuddered. He had investigated the small Samsara realm and the great Samsara realm clearly all along the way. It could be said that he had explored more than 90% of the areas but had not found any trace of the Eye of Samsara. This gold and silver eyeball was the first eyeball-type treasure he had ever seen. But Lin Feng nodded as he held it in his hand. Even if this wasn't the Eye of Samsara, it was still an energy treasure that could replenish perfect source core force and was suitable for him. Obtaining the Eye of Samsara is a disaster-level mission. 1,000 military credits is the standard reward for a disaster-level mission. In other words, this is something an ordinary 12-star universe warrior can accomplish with all his might. A 12-star universe warrior was equivalent to an outstanding peak Yuan venerate. In terms of the 100 million Luan origin realms, it wouldn't be difficult for a top-notch universe warrior of this level to complete a mission in the Great Samsara realm. Their lives would only be threatened if they passed the golden Eye of Samsara. Most likely, Lin Feng put away the Eye of Samsara. Based on this analysis, the Eye of Samsara shouldn't be a rare item. If the mission could be completed, there would definitely be more than this one. There would definitely be more in other places. For the current him, the Eye of Samsara was something he needed. If I have the Eye of Samsara to replenish perfect source core force, I can use more control attacks with perfect source core force as the core. This way, the energy consumption of my source C will be reduced. There are less than 10 great source soul fruits left. I will save them for when I need them. The Eye of Samsara. Lin Feng nodded and looked around. This broken wall didn't look too special. The appearance of the Eye of Samsara didn't seem to have any special pattern. It seemed to have formed naturally. Maybe if I find a few more eyes of reincarnation, I'll find something. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to search. At this time, there were waves of tremors and ripples under his feet, and the aftermath was a little stronger than before. Lin Feng's eyes fell on the front, and a calling feeling surged into his heart. There seemed to be something waiting for him in the deep darkness. Let's go. Lin Feng didn't care too much about Universe 7's godly inquisition. Even if he knew that the God of Eternity would inevitably be around, he couldn't avoid it. Even if he wanted to hide, Universe 7's godly inquisition would always have a way to find him. Since that was the case, why avoid it? Do what you need to do. Whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng moved at lightning speed, sticking close to the barrier. There was one advantage to moving forward this way, and that was that he could avoid as much risk as possible. Although Lin Feng was confident in his senses, he also knew that there was always someone better out there. Anyone who could enter this place was definitely not an ordinary Peak Yuan Venerate. Previously, there was an expert spying on him, but he was unable to detect it. Huang Zun's level, his internal universe, and the fact that he came from a child universe restricted him in all sorts of ways. I also have a probing-type treasure. It should be done refining soon. In the world of the Golden Eye, Qin Emperor Yuan Xian's all-encompassing ability had started to refine the last special-type pinnacle chaotic treasure after refining the ultimate chaos treasure, the Phantom Spider Hand. Now it was nearing the end. The grade of his probing-type treasure should not be low. Lin Feng knew that a Taichu cultivator with so many treasures was obviously not an ordinary person. Thus, his probing-type treasure would naturally not be bad. In the Golden Eye Samsara of the 100 million wheel origin realms. Wu Chang, bring him out. I'll wait here. King Tidy's expression was solemn. His voice was as sonorous as iron, like an immovable mountain. Yes, my lord. A man with a huge sword on his back answered. He had a metal ring on his forehead, and his ink-black skin was covered in stripes. Although he was a Peak Yuan Venerate, his aura was extremely powerful. The auras of the 9 Peak Yuan Venerate powerhouses behind him weren't weak either. They were the elites of the 13 core. There was a special boundary around the 100 million wheel tomb. Almighties who entered would be killed immediately. There had been a few confident Peak Almighties who had barged into the 100 million wheel tomb but had not been able to escape death. Although the Titan Monarch was strong, he was only an extraordinary Almighty. Thus, he didn't dare take the risk. There were many Peak Yuan Venerates in the 13 core. It was enough to select a team of elites to enter. Every elite brought by the Titan Monarch was comparable to an ordinary Almighty. Muzin was the number 1 Peak Yuan Venerate powerhouse in the 13 core. His strength was comparable to a Peak Almighty. Taisho. The Titan Monarch turned his head. Father, Taisho replied. Follow Muzin. Don't take half a step away, the Titan Monarch instructed. Yes, father. Taisho was very obedient in front of his father. Of course, he also knew his own limitations. Taisho's strength was considered decent among mid-level Yuan Venerates, but he was far from qualified to enter the 100 million wheel tomb. Almost every powerhouse in the 100 million wheel tomb could kill him. However, with Muzin leading a team of elites from the 13th division, Taisho wasn't too worried. Furthermore, this was a good opportunity for him to avenge his humiliation. He had been obliterated by Huang Zun from the sub-universe. Now was the time for revenge. He didn't believe that Huang Zun could even defeat Muzin. It must be a treasure. It must be a Hongmeng source item. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caused such a huge commotion. Hee hee. It's better to come at the right time than to come early. This treasure will be mine. A bunch of ignorant fools. A huge commotion might not necessarily be a treasure. It could also be the birth of a monster or the collapse of the 100 million wheel tomb. When that happens, everyone will be buried alive. There are so many prey. We will definitely be able to kill to our heart's content this time. Winds and clouds surged. Within the 100 million wheel tomb, as the earthquake continued, the fluctuations became greater and greater. Powerhouses in the 100 million wheel tomb also emerged one by one. Among them were people who had been in the 100 million wheel tomb for countless epochs, while others, like Lin Feng, had just entered. However, they all had the same characteristic: very strong. The golden eye samsara prevented more than 90% of the peak Yuan venerate cultivators from entering. Those who could enter the 100 million wheel tomb were all powerhouses with strong willpower. Cultivators with strong willpower had firm beliefs and were much stronger than cultivators of the same level, regardless of whether they were righteous or evil. At the moment, Lin Feng was also rushing toward the source of the earthquake. All of a sudden, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as his speeding figure paused. A black light flashed in his hand, enlarging and turning into a black spider. The energy of the original sea condensed, and the perfect source heart force acted as the axis, blasting out instantly. Chi. Its speed was astonishing and its power was unparalleled. It was a supreme chaotic treasure, the phantom spider hand. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 2794. Dear friends, please forgive me at taking a day off for Blade Shatters the Galaxy. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 2795. How could one's shoes not get wet if they often walked by the river? Lin Feng only had the strength of a sovereign venerate. If he had been treated as an opponent in the small reincarnation realm, he would have been hated by everyone in the great reincarnation realm. Thus, many peak Yuan venerates would not miss such a prey in the 100 million wheel tomb. Not all powerhouses were as cautious as Pai saw. So what if Lin Feng had a backer? They had not risked their lives to enter the 100 million wheel tomb for fun. They were fighting with their lives. Killing a peak Yuan venerate would reap great rewards, but killing Huang Zun with a backer would only reap more rewards. Let me send you on your way, little fellow. It was a bat-headed demon with a hooked nose and a pair of huge black wings on his back. He shuttled back and forth continuously in the narrow space. His comprehension of space had already surpassed the 13th level and reached the great perfection. Every peak Yuan venerate that entered the 100 million wheel tomb was extraordinary. Chi. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. A black spider suddenly appeared in the distance. Its 8 arms were covered in cesium, and layers of bubbles appeared wherever it passed, obstructing the space. A misty light flickered as the black spider moved extremely quickly. It's a controlling treasure of the supreme chaos. The bat-headed demon saw through it at a glance. He was not afraid of one-thought Yuan venerates that could control object. He had absolute confidence in his movement techniques and control of space. Whoosh! The moment the black spider wrapped around the bat-headed demon, the space shattered like a net. The next moment, the bat-headed demon teleported in front of the black spider and stopped its attack. Sizzle, sizzle, the space collapsed and turned into fragments. The bat-headed demon's sharp screeches produced an exaggerated magnetic sound as it spread its wings and went straight for Lin Feng's head. It was so fast that it arrived in the blink of an eye. However, boom! This was the most direct attack from the origin sea. Just as the bat-head demon appeared in Lin Feng's line of sight, the demonic sound pierced through his brain. The bat-head demon let out a hysterical cry, his face a mixture of green and white, instantly twisting. Boom! The pinnacle soul defense true treasure shattered, and white light shone from his body. The color of blood permeated the air, and a sky-blue light appeared, but it was extinguished in an instant. At the last moment, the bat-headed demon wanted to save his life and escape. He did have a special life-saving treasure of the chaos, but the impact of the origin sea was not only powerful, but also deadly. The moment the bat-headed demon's soul defense treasure shattered, it was over. Perhaps if the bat-headed demons didn't resist and escaped the instant their soul defensive true treasures blocked the attack, there would still be hope. However, was it possible to escape without resisting? His opponent was only Huang Zun. There are quite a few treasures here. Lin Feng's harvest was bountiful. In addition to many pinnacle chaotic cardinal treasures, the bat-headed demon clan also had many Hongmeng origin crystals. However, they did not have any supreme chaotic cardinal treasures. The peak Yuan venerates of the 100 million wheel tomb were generally quite wealthy, and were much wealthier than the powerhouses of the great Samsara realm. However, supreme chaos true treasures were still relatively precious. The phantom arachnid hand has a certain restraining ability, especially when it comes to spatial restrictions. However, Lin Feng had familiarized himself with the phantom arachnid hand through battle and discovered many shortcomings. Firstly, his control over his source soul wasn't high, and secondly, his proficiency with the phantom arachnid hand wasn't high. Although the phantom arachnid hand, which had been fused with the City of Will, was very powerful, he had to be able to attack his opponent first. The bat-headed demon just now had very strong spatial attainments. Unfortunately, while he was strong in one aspect, he was also weak in another. His defense was much weaker than Xing Jin's great eternity god. It would be great if there were great source soul fruit. What Lin Feng needed the most now was great source soul fruit. Treasures and whatnot could make do for a while. However, if there weren't enough great source soul fruits, the energy of the source sea would be greatly depleted, and he wouldn't be able to use his trump card. This would have a huge impact on Lin Feng. After all, this was what allowed him to establish himself in this place. The death of the bat-headed demon didn't count for much in the 100 million wheel tomb. In this cruel purgatory there was nothing but killing. If they encountered a weak opponent, they would kill them. If they encountered a strong opponent, they would avoid them. Everyone played the role of both hunter and prey as they traveled through the 100 million wheel tomb. Moreover, the 100 million wheel tomb itself was also very dangerous. Many forbidden areas were filled with danger, and many natural hazards even almighties couldn't escape from. This was because this was the true core of the 100 million wheel master. A Khanate almighty born from the 100 million wheel origin world would have a 100 million wheel origin world in their internal universe. However, the 100 million wheel master had his own consciousness and core, and his core was located in the deepest part of the 100 million wheel origin world. It was something that hadn't existed in the beginning, the 100 million wheel tomb. This wasn't the tomb of the 100 million wheel master, but the heart of the 100 million wheel master. Impressive. Lin Feng sighed. After killing the bat-headed demon for the first time, the next 3 battles had all ended in a draw. The opponent of the second battle was a special life form that was adept at concealment and had been waiting in ambush in the dark. If it hadn't been for Xinxiu's strength and vigilance, it would have been very dangerous. After all, Lin Feng's defense wasn't very strong. The opponent of the third battle was a fire-controlling Yuan Venerate that was similar to the Black Flame Eternal God. It used the Hongmeng sacred fire fruit as its core, and its offensive power was off the chart. Furthermore, it was adept at both close combat and long-range attacks. After a long battle with the Phantom Spider Hand, neither of them could do anything to the other and eventually retreated. Lin Feng didn't give chase, nor did he use his Source Ocean to forcefully kill his opponent. It wasn't worth it whether he could kill his opponent or not. The fourth opponent that Lin Feng had just encountered was the strongest one that he had encountered since entering the 100 million wheel tomb. Not only had his yin-yang integration technique reached a perfect level, but his internal universe had also completely suppressed his body. His attainments in time and space were also extremely high, reaching the 13th level. His strength was very comprehensive. The phantom spider hand was completely ineffective against him. This was also the first time that Lin Feng had encountered a strong opponent that controlled a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. In Lin Feng's opinion, this person's strength was even above the sacred gold eternal gods. Even his source soul's defense was a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. If he hadn't retreated in fear, it would have been hard to say who would have won. My own strength can be said to be at the bottom of the list here. After a few battles, Lin Feng also understood that although the phantom spider hand was very strong, his source soul's control over it couldn't even unleash a 10,000th of its power. Rather than using the phantom spider hand, it was more like using it as a carrier to unleash the City of Will's smash attack. The City of Will's smash attack at the large success stage had astonishing power. However, his internal universe wasn't as strong as his opponent's, so he was at a huge disadvantage in this aspect. However, he had trump cards and killer moves. His own source ocean's destructive power was extremely great. Coupled with the City of Will's smash attack, it was even more successful. The few battles were enough to prove this. There was always a taller mountain. Perhaps he would encounter an opponent with a top-notch source soul defense. At that time, he would be in trouble. The refining is complete. Lin Feng's heart stirred. Chapter 2796. It was a special type pinnacle chaos treasure, seamless. It could be used without mastery. This was the advantage of a special type treasure. Its upper limit might not be high, but its lower limit was not bad. It was especially suitable for Lin Feng, who was running out of time. It could be used without mastery. It could send out imperceptible ripples through space. Not only could it detect enemies in the surroundings, but it could also detect treasures or other special things nearby. It could not be seen with the naked eye, but seamless detection ability could. Any energy fluctuation could not be hidden from seamless, unless the opponent's concealment ability was heaven-defying. If one wanted to move, there would always be a slight change. Aura detection might not be able to detect the opponent because many experts used their energy in an instant and then concealed themselves. At this time, seamless could detect. If I refined it earlier, I would have been able to detect the ambushing enemy in the second battle. Lin Feng also felt lucky. If he had not been vigilant at that time, he would have died. The opponent's concealment ability was too amazing. There was no sound at all. But now that he had seamless, he did not need to worry. Continue refining. The all-encompassing ability of the Qin Emperor's origin heart was the biggest advantage for Lin Feng. He did not need to control it and could refine it on his own. Generally, refining a pinnacle chaos treasure would not take too much time. The 4 treasures from Tai Yinfu had been refined, but Lin Feng still had many pinnacle chaos treasures with him. One of them was the indigo special type pinnacle chaos treasure he had just obtained from killing the bat-headed demon. Lin Feng had seen the bat-headed demon use it when he killed it. Unfortunately, he had died before he could use it. This was a life-saving pinnacle chaos treasure. At present, he needed it the most. Rumble! Rumble! The earth was still shaking violently. Lin Feng could clearly feel the aftermath of the tremors under his feet. Even at such a distance, the tremors were so obvious. It was obvious how powerful the tremors were at the epicenter. I wonder what's happening inside. Lin Feng's curiosity was piqued. With the appearance of a strange phenomenon, there was bound to be a strange treasure. Although Lin Feng didn't think that he would be able to obtain a strange treasure, and that it might be very dangerous, he had never been afraid. As an expert, he couldn't be afraid of the slightest thing. Most importantly, he had sensed something calling out to him as soon as he entered the origin realm, and it was right in front of him. The source of the tremors. Whoosh! Whoosh! Chi! Figure after figure rapidly advanced through the various passages of the 100 million-wheel tomb. Their destination was the same as Lin Feng's. These peak yuan venerate powerhouses who lived on the edge of a blade wouldn't miss such a grand occasion. A black skinny figure with a black headband and a black cloak appeared. He held a black dagger in his hand. He looked unremarkable, but he was one of the strongest in the 100 million-wheel tomb's rapier shadow. Countless souls had died under his black dagger. Although he had not been in the 100 million-wheel tomb for long, he had killed tens of thousands of people, and his reputation was illustrious. Rumble. Every step he took seemed to shake the heavens and earth. It was a burly man carrying a giant greenish-purple hammer. His huge body was comparable to 10,000 rapier shadows, and the giant hammer flickering with greenish-purple light could smash a peak yuan venerate into smithereens if it smashed down. Ha ha ha! He laughed strangely as he hurried along. Although this burly man looked unremarkable, his reputation wasn't any worse than rapier shadows. He had stayed in the 100 million-wheel tomb for many eras, and no powerhouse had been able to kill him, including rapier shadow. He called himself the Green Hammer King. Everyone, be careful. Don't get too close to the light circle ahead. Be careful, it will gradually spread. Many powerhouses had already gathered at the source of the tremors. The most eye-catching one was a four-armed man in blue light armor. He had 2 spiral horns on his forehead and had the aura of an emperor. He was giving orders to the powerhouses like a leader. The group of unruly powerhouses also believed in him. Although the light circle at the source of the tremors was shining brightly and the energy aura was intense, no one was greedy enough to approach it under his command. Heavenly King Zhao Kuang. In addition to these 3, there were many other powerhouses with decent strength in the 100 million-wheel tomb. For example, old immortal Mingyu, who was good at using poison, the Rolling Blade disciple, who had top-notch fighting abilities, and the Yin-Yang Demon Hand, who had completely suppressed Lin Feng and escaped unscathed after being hit by the Source Ocean. There was also Muzan, who had just led the 13 Corps and led 9 elite universe soldiers comparable to Almighty's. This was an even greater force. Muzan himself had the strength of a top-notch Almighty. Although the news of the 100 million-wheel tomb being unearthed had already spread, it would take a long time for them to enter the 100 million-wheel origin realm from the Taichu origin realm to pass through the small Samsara realm and the great Samsara realm. It would be too late by the time they arrived. The ones who could really fight for the treasure were the powerhouses in the 100 million-wheel tomb. Of course, this included Eternal God Xingjin, who was painstakingly searching for Lin Feng. Eternal God Xingjin was also heading toward the source of the tremors, hoping to meet Lin Feng there. The 100 million-wheel tomb was too big, and there were too many forks in the road. It was too complicated, and they had to face all kinds of unknown dangers. Finding Lin Feng was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was not easy. The Eternal Ian God was able to stand guard outside and wait peacefully because this wasn't a mission he was responsible for. Him coming to help Xingjin was already giving the Eternal Ian God a lot of face, so he naturally wouldn't lower himself to help. Unless Eternal God Xingjin begged him. It's been so long, and you still can't find Lin Feng. Xingjin, you are really useless. Eternal God Xingjin was wearing the Pope's robe and holding a scepter. He floated quietly in the air, sacred and inviolable. Come and beg me, Xingjin. Lin Feng was in a lot of danger. The deeper he went into the 100 million-wheel tomb, the more enemies he encountered. The Phantom Spider Hand was not strong enough, so Lin Feng could not use any other killing moves apart from his Source Sea. As for the Mirage Sea Dark Sand, it was only a perfect chaos supreme treasure and its grade was too low. The greatest danger did not come from the enemy but from himself. There are only 2 great Source Soul Fruits left. Lin Feng was having a headache. After entering this place, he had fought more than a dozen battles and used his Source Sea attack too many times. Although he had killed 2 peak yuan venerates and gained a lot, including Hongmeng source crystals, the problem was that he had no use for them now. On the other hand, he had obtained another Eye of Samsara, which Lin Feng used to replenish his perfect source heart force. However, the great source soul fruits were getting fewer and fewer. If he continued to use them, it would be a disaster. Lin Feng had encountered a yuan venerate one thought before. One was from the demon race, while the other was a special life form. The former fought fiercely and was evenly matched, while the latter's battle was shallow and it had fled before even seeing Lu Shan's face. If this continued, he would definitely run out of ammunition and food. I have to think of a way. Lin Feng had already slowed down. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website Chapter 2797. There were only 2 ways to do so. First, he could start from within himself. Second, he could start from the outside. He could start from within himself by finding a place to cultivate in peace and improve his internal universe. His control of the phantom spider hand would increase, and he would be able to contend with a peak yuan venerate. The energy consumption of his source C would also be greatly reduced. He could start from the outside by searching for the great origin soul fruit. It would undoubtedly be very difficult to find it in the 100 million wheel origin realm. He could either leave the 100 million wheel origin realm and return to Feather God Ridge, or obtain it from other first thought yuan venerate. Leaving the 100 million wheel origin realm and returning to Feather God Ridge would be a joke. Lin Feng was sure that Gold Eyes and Silver Eyes were in a dangerous place. If he could get in, he wouldn't be able to get out, unless he obtained a special treasure that would allow him to leave without being noticed. Or perhaps this special peak primal chaos treasure can give me a pleasant surprise? Lin Feng did not have much hope for this. Generally, special primal chaos treasures that could protect one's life were already pretty good. It would be too extravagant to hope that it had additional special functions. If he did not want to find a place to hide and cultivate, there was only one way: he had to find other first thought yuan venerates. However, this was easier said than done. Even if he found them, they would not be so easy to kill. It was not as if he had not encountered them before. The first thought yuan venerates here were much stronger than those in the great samsara realm, and there would not be so many fish for him to kill. The impact of his source spirit was not weak, but the source spirit of a first thought yuan venerate was much stronger than other yuan venerates. There was no other way now. He could only take it one step at a time. If there was no other way, he could only find a place to cultivate and recover the energy of his source C while cultivating. Although it was not a good plan, it was not a bad one. Rushing forward blindly was the most foolish way to do things. In the 100 million wheel burial mound, whoosh! A figure that looked like a nouveau riche, whose entire body was glowing with golden light, arrived with his chest puffed out. This was a special life form that looked like an ancient ape. Its potential and talent were extraordinary, and the aura of a peak yuan venerate emanated from it. Ha ha! I, Lord my heir, am here. Golden Eye Samsara is just SOSO. He had an arrogant and complacent look on his face. He was none other than Wei Er, who had been beaten twice by Lin Feng and had been forced to buy the Arhat Luohan jade. However, this was also a blessing in disguise. After using the secret technique, he returned to his sect to cultivate and broke through to become a high-level yuan venerate in one fell swoop. Then, under the careful nurturing of his teacher, he advanced by leaps and bounds in just a few dozen eras and naturally became a peak yuan venerate. Makok's talent was extremely high, and he had a teacher to guide him. Now that he had been humiliated twice by the same Huang Zun, Makok felt even more indignant and stifled. Now, my heir's strength had greatly improved, and he had entered the 100 million wheel tomb for the first time with his peak chaos true treasure, the golden rod. My heir wasn't the only one. Many peak yuan venerates in the great samsara realm had entered the 100 million wheel tomb after news of the treasure's unearthing spread. Anyone who could pass the golden eye samsara and was ambitious enough would enter. Who knows, maybe the treasure would fall on their heads. Every cultivator had some extravagant hopes in their hearts. They all wanted to obtain some fortuitous encounters. This was normal. The aftershocks of the tremors are indeed very strong. Teacher is right. This is a great opportunity. Let's see if I can obtain it. My heir brandished the golden rod in his hands and mystic inscriptions revealed themselves. Now, he could perfectly control this top-notch peak chaos true treasure. His strength had also improved greatly. After becoming a peak yuan venerate, his internal universe had also been strengthened to the limit. Now, my heir was more than 10 times stronger than he had been when he had fought Lin Feng. Since he dared to enter the 100 million wheel tomb, he naturally had a certain level of confidence. Hua! Hua hua! The golden rod exuded intense energy and boundless strength. My heir's roar echoed like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins and charged forward bravely and fearlessly. It's a pity that I can't bump into that little fellow Huang Zun in the great samsara realm. Otherwise, hee. Let's see if my golden rod doesn't smash him to death. The battles in the 100 million wheel burial mound didn't stop. Just like the aftershocks of the tremors, the closer one got to the source of the tremors, the more opponents one would encounter. Lin Feng's cultivation base was at a disadvantage compared to Huang Zun's, so most of the powerhouses would target him. Last one. Lin Feng sighed helplessly. The great source soul fruit's abundant energy replenished the energy of his source C. Although he didn't want to consume it and avoided battles as much as possible, the more he avoided his opponents, the more his opponents wouldn't want to let him go. It was normal to bully the weak and fear the strong. Although he had killed a peak yuan venerate and obtained many treasures, none of them were as precious as a great source soul fruit to Lin Feng. He had never encountered a yuan venerate with one thought either. Everything seemed to be destined. Looks like I'm not fated to obtain this treasure. Lin Feng was also decisive. Since the great source soul fruit had been exhausted, he couldn't advance any further. Relying on luck alone wouldn't last long. Countless powerhouses would gather at the source of the tremors, so he would be a sitting duck if he entered without anything. After all, the great Ian God of Universe 7's divine tribunal was frantically searching for him. If the treasure was gone, then so be it. If his life was gone, then it would really be gone. Retreat. No matter how strong the calling was, Lin Feng remained indifferent. He naturally had to take a risk. However, the premise was his own safety. He didn't even have the ability to protect himself, so how could he take a risk? He would just be throwing his life away. Actually, on the other hand, it's also a good thing that treasures have been unearthed. Lin Feng retreated in a carefree manner. All the powerhouses are gathered at the source of the tremors. The other places are empty, so the safety factor is greatly increased. I can find a secluded place far away from the source of the tremors and cultivate in peace. In the end, I still need other abilities besides the source C. Taking an unconventional path isn't a long-term plan. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Lin Feng knew very well that this wasn't his forte. Mind cultivators should master many kinds of abilities and counter every move. Furthermore, he was an origin source primal chaos venerate, so he was well versed in all kinds of cultivation. Previously, he had been forced by Universe 7's divine tribunal and had had no choice. However, if he could survive this time, he couldn't be so passive anymore. Given my attainments in Source Spirit, I can already break through to the Origin Source Primal Chaos Venerate. During this period, Lin Feng's Source Spirit had improved rapidly, but his physical body and strength had stagnated. There were gains and losses. In order to break through to the Origin Source Primal Chaos Venerate, both the Origin Source Body and Source Spirit had to have the corresponding strength. Once I break through to the origin source primal chaos venerate, my internal universe will be comparable to the vast majority of peak yuan venerate powerhouses in the Taichu origin primal chaos universe. Lin Feng had a deep understanding of this. Otherwise, the phantom spider hand, a supreme primal chaos treasure, would be much more powerful. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2798. Lin Feng was no longer a rookie in the 100 million wheel tomb. Although he still couldn't completely recognize the way, he was much more familiar with it than when he had first entered. He wouldn't get lost or run around randomly. There were many forbidden areas in the 100 million wheel tomb, so it was dangerous to wander around randomly. However, the 100 million wheel tomb was still the 100 million wheel tomb. Going forward meant fighting, but retreating meant running into enemies. This time, Lin Feng felt different. This battle was much easier than in the past. He used the phantom spider hand and the city of will to knock his opponent unconscious time and time again. They were both peak yuan venerates, but the difference in strength could be huge. This demon race powerhouse was only good at attacking. His speed wasn't good and his defense was mediocre. After dozens of battles, I've finally encountered a fish. There was always a better mountain. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. If he only used the phantom spider hand, he would be at the bottom here. However, it was only almost because there were definitely people weaker than him. Right now there was one. This demon race powerhouse could still put up a fight if he had encountered other close combat opponents. However, he was completely restrained by a controlling yuan venerate. If Lin Feng used the origin seize attack, he could easily kill him. With a roar, the injured demon race powerhouse finally escaped. Lin Feng didn't kill him because source C energy was very precious. He also didn't chase him because there was no need to. However, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. Such an opponent was like a sparring partner who helped Lin Feng practice the phantom spider hand, improve his proficiency, and improve his control of source souls. The improvement in battle was the fastest. Lin Feng had peak cultivation chaos ultimate treasures, the universal extreme source, which could improve the quality of his source soul, and the endless blue ocean, which could expand his source C. However, he didn't have any that could improve his control of his source soul. He could only rely on himself to slowly cultivate step by step. The first time was a coincidence, but it wasn't a coincidence if he encountered such a fish a second or third time. It seems like many ordinary peak yuan venerates have entered. Lin Feng understood right away. News of the treasure being unearthed must have spread. Thus, all the peak yuan venerates who could break through the golden eye samsara had squeezed in to try their luck. What a pity! Lin Feng sighed in his heart. The chances of killing a yuan venerate, one thought, among this group of peak yuan venerates would undoubtedly be much higher. However, he no longer had any great origin soul fruits, so he had to take a huge risk every time he attacked his source C. If he failed to kill them, what awaited him would be a nightmarish pursuit, and he would be powerless to fight back. There was nothing to regret. After all, he didn't know that things would develop like this. All the decisions he made before were absolutely correct at that moment. Let's find a place to cultivate first. Lin Feng had no interest in tangling with these fishes. The most important thing for him was to make the best use of his time to improve his combat strength. Once the treasure was unearthed and the dust settled, the entire region would once again become a place where heroes vied for supremacy. It would be much more dangerous. Haha. Weak, so King weak. Holding a golden pestle and wearing a long Kai armor, the completely transformed macaque looked awe-inspiring and invincible. Since he entered the 100 million wheel tomb, he had won 4 and drawn 1 out of the 5 battles. This gave him a lot of confidence. The current him was very strong. The experts of the 100 million wheel tomb were nothing special. It's just that my internal universe is strong and my treasures are better. Hee hee. Macaque was brimming with confidence. He had been worried that he would encounter danger in the 100 million-wheel tomb, but after a few battles, he realized that the opponents here weren't much stronger than those in the great Samsara realm. His internal universe wasn't weaker than other Yuan venerate powerhouses now. Although he didn't have a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure, his bloodline talent wasn't inferior to a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. Furthermore, he had all kinds of treasures. His offense was strong, his speed wasn't weak, and his defense wasn't weak. He had no weaknesses. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to kill his opponents in 5 battles. I will definitely be able to in the next battle. Macaque was very confident. As he sped along, he suddenly sensed an aura and his eyes lit up. Hiding in a corner sneakily. Either you are weak or you are seriously injured. Ha ha! Look at my big stick. I will smash you to death. Macaque was very excited. He had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Before entering the 100 million-wheel tomb, his teacher had specially equipped him with a peak chaotic ultimate treasure to ensure that he was safe. It just so happened that he could use it. The opponent he sensed was also using this type of peak chaotic ultimate treasure, so it was clear that it was like a magnet colliding with a magnet. Whoosh! Macaque was very fast. After transforming into a peak Yuan venerate, the potential in his body had been fully realized. His bloodline talent was undoubtedly on full display. Macaque displayed the characteristics of the ancient Meng ape race: fast speed, strong attack, and invincible strength. This was also the reason why he had been able to continuously defeat strong opponents after entering the 100 million-wheel tomb. He was rapidly approaching. Macaque's eyes were filled with ambition. This was a battle that he was determined to win. However, the strange thing was that his opponent clearly knew that he was approaching. Not only did he not move or escape, but he also didn't release his aura. Were his injuries too serious? Or was he absolutely confident in his own strength? Macaque would have been more at ease if his opponent had fled in a panic. However, his opponent wasn't moving at all, which made Macaque feel uneasy instead. His intuition told him that something bad was about to happen. Chi! A beam of black light appeared in an instant. It was a black spider glowing with a misty light. Its 8 spider arms reached out to grab at Yi Futian. The boundless light contained an illusion. A city the size of a mountain suddenly appeared in the void, causing the black spider to become extraordinarily large in an instant. What is this? Macaque was a little stunned. He had never seen such an attack before. However, it was obvious that his opponent this time was proficient in controlling attacks. Furthermore, this was a supreme chaotic treasure. Oh no! Macaque's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate this time. However, he was even more confident in himself after the transformation of his strength. In the past, he would have fled already. However, he wanted to fight it out now. A Yuan venerate with one thought was nothing. As long as he could get close enough, he could trample on him. Crack! Macaque's fighting spirit surged as he gritted his teeth. Boom! The golden pestle collided with the black spider. In an instant, the huge city came crashing down. Macaque felt a sharp pain between his thumb and index finger. He almost lost his grip on the golden pestle, and his breath was sucked back into his body. He was dizzy and his head was buzzing. A heart force cultivator. After this round of battle, my heir immediately knew the identity of his opponent. He frowned slightly. Apart from the perfect source heart force, he also sensed a familiar aura. Very familiar. No, very familiar. When the black spider appeared again, a figure faintly appeared in the void and entered his line of sight. No way! Macaque turned pale with fright. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. He had already sensed his opponent completely. The nightmarish aura of Huang Zun was deeply imprinted in his heart like a demon. Why had he bumped into him again? Chapter 2799. To my heir, Lin Feng was a nightmare. He had never forgotten the 2 times he had fought with Lin Feng. Both times, he had been taught a painful lesson. A Huang Zun human from a sub-universe had beaten him, a Taichu cultivator from a famous family. It was a humiliation. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. My heir had returned to the chaotic universe of the Taichu origin and worked hard to cultivate. He had used his unyielding will to cross the bottleneck and force himself to complete the breakthrough. He was very strong now. In my heir's opinion, he was 100% confident that he could kill that Huang Zun human if he met him again. But now, boom! It was yet another round of confrontation. The black spider's eyes flashed with a strange luster. My heir's already shaken will was affected even more. Although his internal universe was stronger than Lin Feng's, my heir's mental state and the situation made it difficult for him to move. Why was he here? This was the 100 million-wheel grave. Moreover, when did his control attacks become so powerful? Others might not know, but my heir had fought with Lin Feng before. He knew that Lin Feng was only strong in one aspect, and that was his source soul attack. Everything else was average. But this time, Lin Feng had suppressed him with only his control attack. Once Lin Feng used his source soul attack, it would be terrible. 2 crushing defeats had left a deep shadow in my heir's heart. Facing Lin Feng, he was naturally mentally weaker. Coupled with the setback he had suffered, he fell into deep self-doubt. The difference in strength between self-confidence and lack of self-confidence would be very big. Boom! The phantom spider attacked again and again. Its attack power was much stronger than when it had just been refined. Lin Feng appeared in the sky and looked down at my heir, his eyes flashing. He had already sensed my heir when he approached. In terms of sensing ability and probing ability, Lin Feng was naturally superior to Macaque. In fact, even Lin Feng hadn't expected to meet my heir again in the 100 million-wheel grave. It was indeed fate. Stop! Brother, stop! He's one of us! Seeing that he couldn't win, Macaque shouted shamelessly. This wasn't his first time anyway, so he was very familiar with it. The last time he shouted, Lin Feng had stopped. This time, as expected, Lin Feng stopped again. Lin Feng looked at my heir. You're the one who's going to fight, and you're the one who's not going to fight. My heir laughed awkwardly and said, Hee hee, brother, I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I wouldn't have made a move. We are comrades who have fought side by side. Macaque was smart to bring up the past. That day when he fought side by side with Lin Feng, although it wasn't a favor, at least Lin Feng would remember his kind intentions. Sure enough, Lin Feng's fighting spirit dissipated a lot in an instant. That's the 3rd time. Lin Feng landed in front of my heir. The flood washed over the Dragon King Temple. It's a misunderstanding. My heir's face was full of smiles as he apologized profusely. He didn't dare to offend Lin Feng. After all, my heir had personally experienced the terrifying power of this inconspicuous human emperor's origin. Last time, he could escape with the Arhat Pearl Jade, but this time? Over the past few days, his opponent's strength had increased tremendously. Even the control attacks, which he wasn't good at in the past, were now on par with him. How powerful was his strongest trump card now? It was hard to imagine. The Arhat Pearl Jade could only block attacks below the power of an almighty. If the attack power exceeded that of an almighty, it would lose its effect. Although my heir could escape, he didn't want to take the risk. Moreover, he had interacted with Lin Feng before and knew that he wasn't a difficult person to talk to. As long as he was willing to apologize and smile, Lin Feng would accept it. Do you have the Arhat Pearl Jade? Lin Feng went straight to the point and said, I won't let you lose out. Then, he took out a peak chaos treasure and flew it to my heir. But my heir caught it almost reflexively. Just as he was about to take a look at the treasure's value, his expression changed slightly. He knew that he had been tricked by Lin Feng again. Regardless of the treasure's value, when he caught it, His expression and actions clearly told Lin Feng that he had the Arhat Pearl Jade. However, in terms of value, this peak chaos treasure was of good quality. It was enough to exchange for a Arhat Pearl Jade. Here. My heir didn't hesitate. He took out the Arhat Pearl Jade and threw it to Lin Feng. Although his sect had ordered him not to sell it, he wasn't selling it to a Taichu cultivator, so no one would be able to find out. Once was dirty, twice was dirty. Anyway, it wasn't the first time he had traded with Lin Feng. Thank you. Lin Feng took the Arhat Pearl Jade and refined it. It turned into a wisp of red light and disappeared into his chest. There seemed to be an extra soul and life in his body, like a guardian deity. To Lin Feng, the more life-saving treasures he had, the better. Nice working with you. My heir had already put away the peak chaos treasure. He grinned and said, "Then I'm leaving. We'll meet again if fate wills it." Wait. Lin Feng suddenly spoke. My heir felt a chill down his spine and cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. What he wanted most was to get rid of Lin Feng as soon as possible. Being around this dangerous guy made him tremble with fear. Who knew when Lin Feng would kill him? "Haha, brother Lin, is there anything else?" My heir forced a smile and squinted his eyes. His voice trembled. "Do you have a great source soul fruit with you?" Lin Feng asked. My heir shook his head. "I really don't have it, brother. Do me a favor." Lin Feng knew that my heir didn't have it. For my heir, who cultivated his body and strength, it was useless for him to have a great source soul fruit. But even if he didn't have it, he could get it. Huh! My heir pulled a long face. He knew things wouldn't go so smoothly. He was secretly accumulating power. If Lin Feng's request was too harsh, my heir would rather lose a treasure and risk his source soul being severely damaged to escape. "Help me exchange 150 great source soul fruits, and I'll give you 5 Hongmeng source crystals as a reward." After killing several peak yuan venerates, Lin Feng had accumulated 20 Hongmeng source crystals. Although it wasn't a lot, it was at least more valuable than the peak chaos treasure. 1 Hongmeng source crystal was equivalent to 100 military credit. 1 great source soul fruit was worth 10 military credit. 150 great source soul fruits were worth 15 Hongmeng source crystals. Adding the 5 Hongmeng source crystals as a reward, it was exactly 20 Hongmeng source crystals. Oh! My heir's eyes lit up. This was undoubtedly a good deal for him. He would make a profit without any danger. Great source soul fruits weren't rare items. As long as he had Hongmeng source crystals, he could exchange for as many as he wanted. "Do you have Hongmeng source crystals?" My heir remembered that Lin Feng didn't have any the last time he asked Lin Feng. "Yes." Lin Feng was straightforward. He took out 20 Hongmeng source crystals and tossed one to my heir. "This is the deposit. I'll wait for you here." "Deal." My heir accepted the Hongmeng source crystal without hesitation. Chapter 2800. Lin Feng knew very well that he had to pay the price if he wanted help. 5 Hongmeng source crystals was not a low reward. It was equivalent to 500 military credit. The reward for completing this disaster-level mission was only 1,000 military credit. For my heir, it was just a round trip to the 100 million Luan origin realms. Since he could enter this place unscathed, he could naturally leave and enter again. Furthermore, 10 military credits for 1 fruit was the exchange rate in the Hongmeng realm. The Taichu origin universe might have a more affordable price, or Taichu cultivators might have the privilege of exchange. Lin Feng did not care about any of this. Why would my heir be willing to come back if he did not let him earn more? My heir was not stupid, and neither was Lin Feng. Making a deal relied on mutual benefits, not one side taking advantage of the other. Being able to meet an acquaintance here was also a stroke of luck for Lin Feng. He was pondering how to obtain a great origin soul fruit. Not only was it dangerous to rely on killing other first thought yuan venerates, but it was also unknown whether he could succeed. However, there was no way to obtain a great origin soul fruit other than that, as there were no such treasures in the 100 million Luan origin realms. Completely mastering the phantom spider hand through cultivation was not something that could be done overnight. It just so happened that my heir appeared. Everything is fated. Lin Feng believed that if nothing unexpected happened, my heir would definitely return. With my heir's intelligence, he clearly knew that not only would he be able to earn a good reward, he would also be able to earn a favor from Lin Feng. Why not? Furthermore, it was not a one-time deal. However, a round trip will probably take a lot of time. Lin Feng had entered through the great Samsara realm and knew how big it was. Traversing through it would take too long. However, it did not matter. In fact, it would just be a waste of an opportunity to participate in the unearthing of a treasure. His chances of obtaining a treasure were not high to begin with. During this period, he could cultivate in peace. I hope I don't encounter the great Ian God during this period. Lin Feng was also a little worried. If the other party was really searching for his whereabouts, he would definitely not be able to hide. Fortunately, he encountered a treasure unearthed. If Universe God of Universe 7's godly inquisition was smart enough, he would have certainly gone in the direction of the epicenter, because the probability of finding him there was the highest. It will take a while for the treasure to be unearthed. Lin Feng smiled. While refining the peak primal chaos ultimate treasure, he also cultivated the phantom spider hand while dealing with countless peak Yuan venerate. Every once in a while, he would encounter a few cultivators with ill intentions who treated him as practice. The peak Yuan venerates that had just entered were clearly much weaker than the peak Yuan venerates that had entered the 100 million wheel tomb earlier. As for those super experts who had heard the news, they were still on their way. However, they should be faster than macaque. This was what Lin Feng thought. However, not long after he started cultivating, macaque appeared before Lin Feng again. Lin Feng was shocked. So fast. Macaque chuckled. Brother Lin Feng, you are not in a hurry. Of course, I have to be faster. After saying that, he took out a storage ring. Just as he was about to speak, his vision blurred. 19 Hongmeng source crystals emitted a dazzling light and steadily entered his line of sight. Macaque couldn't help but blush as he tossed the storage ring over. Thank you. Lin Feng caught the storage ring. Within the vast space, 150 great source spirit fruits lay quietly. They contained abundant source spirit energy, which made Lin Feng heave a sigh of relief. This batch of great source spirit fruits could be said to be timely help. It was like an army that had run out of provisions had received sufficient reinforcements. Lin Feng's suspended heart finally relaxed. With this batch of great origin soul fruits, he no longer needed to fear the great Ian God even if he encountered him now. He now had enough ammunition. In addition to the great origin soul fruit, there was also a silver, intricate instrument in the storage space. It was a long and wide palm and was quite complicated. Lin Feng was slightly surprised and curiously took it out. It's a communicator. As long as you are in the Taichu universe, anywhere with Hongmeng energy, you can use it, Macaque said with a smile. My contact information is already stored inside. If you need it next time, remember to look for me, brother. He could use it with Hongmeng energy? Lin Feng was surprised. The Taichu's advanced technology in the chaotic universe was quite convenient. Will I expose my position if I use it? Lin Feng asked. Macaque scratched his head. I don't know, but as long as it's in a closed state, there won't be any impact. Lin Feng nodded. He had to be careful. It was impossible for Universe 7's Inquisition to know that he had a communicator. Even if they knew, it was impossible for them to find him through it. As for Taichu cultivators, he only knew macaque. Okay, I'll contact you if I need it. With the communicator, it would undoubtedly be much more convenient. If it was inconvenient for him to leave, he could contact macaque to buy whatever he needed. Although it would cost him some Hongmeng energy crystals, It was just a small matter. Having a stable source of treasures was the most important thing. After all, even Lin Feng didn't know how long he would stay here. The battle with Universe 7's Inquisition had just begun. After saying goodbye to Macaque, Lin Feng set off again. It was not Lin Feng's intention to retreat from the depths of the 100 million wheel tomb. If he had the ability, Lin Feng still hoped to fight for some treasures, even if it was just a glimpse. After all, this kind of heart-wrenching feeling was too rare. Lin Feng didn't ask how Macaque came back and forth so quickly. Who didn't have a little secret? If Macaque didn't say, there was no need to ask. He just needed to get what he needed. The rest was not important. With these 150 Great Origin Soul Fruits, I can earn at least 10 times the amount of Hongmeng energy crystals. Lin Feng was still very confident in his own strength, especially the combination of the Source Sea and the City of Will, which had always been successful. Actually, I should have asked Macaque to bring an Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure. Lin Feng didn't think so much at the time. Moreover, there were only 20 Hongmeng energy crystals in total. Compared to the Great Origin Soul Fruits, the Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure was not so important. One was timely help, while the other was just icing on the cake. Whether it was the City of Will or the Fifth Heaven of Fallen Star, they could both break the Soul Defense type Peak Chaos treasure. When the two were combined, they could even break the Soul Defense type Peak Chaos treasure. An additional Peak Chaos treasure would only increase the power of the Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure. In comparison, a Peak Chaos treasure that improves the control of the Origin Sea should be more important, right? Lin Feng smiled. There were too many treasures he wanted to buy. But at the moment, his pockets were empty. 1,000 pieces of gold will come back. The core area of the 100 million wheel tomb is very lively now. Following the fluctuations of the earthquake source and the call of his heart, Lin Feng sped forward, his blood boiling. This time, he could fight to his heart's content. Chapter 28:01. It's getting stronger. As he got closer to the epicenter, even the solid remnant was shaking, as if a monster was about to break out of the ground. It wasn't just the epicenter. Even the call in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. It's real. Lin Feng really felt it. Came from the entire 100 million Luan tomb. Every cell in his body was excited. It wasn't because of the great battle that was about to happen, but because of an unknown feeling of joy and a change in his heart. This time, Lin Feng was sure. It was the unprecedented call of the treasure that was about to be unearthed. Silver Eye Realm, Golden Eye Realm. Lin Feng tried to ask my heir, but there didn't seem to be such a realm. Even the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe's mind cultivators hadn't seen such a realm before. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't 100% sure. After all, my heir probably didn't know much. However, the moment he appeared, the 100 million Luan tomb shook violently and the treasure was unearthed. If this was a coincidence, then there were too many coincidences. With so many coincidences mixed together, Lin Feng knew very well that although there were real coincidences, the possibility was very small. Instead, there was a mysterious force pushing. The source of that force was the epicenter. The core area of the 100 million Luan tomb. Lin Feng couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Even if the treasure was unearthed because of him, given his current strength, he simply wasn't qualified to compete for it. Although Lin Feng was confident, he wasn't conceited. If he was the primordial chaos supreme god today, his internal universe wouldn't be at a disadvantage, and he could perfectly control the primordial chaos supreme treasure, the phantom spider hand. He would be able to fight against a group of Taichu cultivators. However, he was only good at one-on-one battles now. The Source Sea attack could kill one, but what about 2 or 3? In a chaotic battle, the threat of the Source Sea attack would be greatly reduced. The number of powerhouses gathered in the core area of the 100 million Luan tomb was unimaginable, and every one of them was a top-notch Yuan Venerate powerhouse. It was fine to join in the fun, but Lin Feng admitted that he didn't have the ability to fight for the treasure and become the target of public criticism. At least, he didn't have the ability now. Although it was a bit of a pity, it was very likely that this was a top-grade treasure that was extremely suitable for him, but that was all he could do. There's a high chance that the treasures in the 100 million cycles origin world are treasures that belong to cultivators of the heart. I already have the Qin Emperor's origin heart, so I don't really need much of it. Lin Feng continued forward calmly. Now that he had sufficient great origin soul fruits in his possession, there was no need for him to continue hiding. Along the way, he had killed and defeated quite a number of experts. Previously, Lin Feng had let them go because he didn't have any ammunition. Now, Lin Feng naturally wouldn't hold back. At the very least, they had to earn back their investment in Hongming's spirit stones. At that time, if I can kill 1 or 2 gods of eternity in the melee, then I'll have made a profit. Universe 7's adjudicator of God considered Lin Feng as prey, but wasn't Lin Feng the same now? Lin Feng was never a soft-hearted person. He was not a man who did not take revenge. Furthermore, offense was the best defense. Blindly hiding like Senior Yellow Spring was definitely not the best way to go about it. It would only encourage the arrogance of Universe 7's adjudicator of God and make them even more unscrupulous. The gods of eternity were also living beings with their own thoughts. They weren't puppets of the will of the Great Path. Once they were hesitant, fearful, or even fearful, the situation would be very different. He wouldn't just sit and wait for death. He would take the initiative to attack. Fate is in your own hands. Lin Feng didn't hesitate to launch an attack when his peak-grade chaotic ultimate treasure, Seamless, found a peak Yuan Venerate. The impact of his source C blasted like a huge wave, and the City of Intent smashed his soul defense treasure to pieces with a loud boom. That peak Yuan Venerate of the demon race didn't even have time to react before he died. He didn't even know what had happened until he died. This is a cultivator from the first sub-universe. After spending a long time in the 100 million Luan origin realms, Lin Feng had also discovered many patterns. Although the Taichu origin chaotic universe had 18 sub-universes, the most common ones he saw were the Taichu cultivators, followed by the cultivators from the first, second, and third sub-universes. The number of cultivators in the fourth sub-universe had decreased significantly. The number of cultivators in the 7th sub-universe was even fewer than in the 10th and 13th sub-universes. The dragon has 9 sons, but each son is different. Lin Feng also understood. Different sub-universes were good at different things. The first, second, and third sub-universes might be relatively perfect. Although they weren't as perfect as the Taichu origin chaotic universe, they only had a few flaws. The other sub-universes were different. For example, the 5th sub-universe had a huge flaw in the power sky law, the 6th sub-universe had a broken energy sky law, and the 9th sub-universe had thin space and time sky laws. The 7th sub-universe has perfect time, space, energy, and power sky laws. However, the soul sky law is flawed, and the heart force sky law is completely absent. Heart force was more manifested on the level of willpower. If one's heart force was weak, their willpower would often be weak. Furthermore, the flaw in the soul sky law made it impossible for Yuan Venerates in the 7th sub-universe to transform their origin souls. Furthermore, the imperfections in these two aspects made their internal universe imperfect as well, making it much more difficult for them to become almighties. I am an exception. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile as he put away the treasure of the demon race Yuan Venerate in the first sub-universe. His origin soul was strong, and his willpower was even stronger. This was the complete opposite of the cultivators in the 7th sub-universe. If he didn't say it, no one would guess that he was a cultivator from the 7th sub-universe. Could it be that I'm not from the 7th sub-universe? Lin Feng smiled. After all, he was a native of Earth. 100 million Luangrave. In addition to Xing Jin, another great Ian god had also entered with this wave of powerhouses. It was great Ian god Kongwu. He had always been a subordinate of the Grand Eternity God. Later, he had been lent to the Grand Eternity God Xing Jin. After the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God had been killed by Lin Feng and the Three-Eyed Grand Eternity God had been severely injured, only the Grand Eternity God Voidance was left. After informing Eternal God Eternity to come, Great Ian God Kongwu naturally returned to Eternal God Eternity's side to guard the Golden Eye reincarnation. However, as more and more powerhouses entered the Golden Eye reincarnation, Eternal God Xingjin's divine power was running out and he needed reinforcements. After all, this wasn't the origin universe and there wasn't the will of the sky. Thus, Eternal God Xingjin's strength was only comparable to an intermediate almighty among ordinary almighties. Apart from Three-Eyed, the rest of the 6 great Ian gods under Eternal God Eternity had all arrived. However, only Eternal God Kongwu could pass the Golden Eye reincarnation. Passing the Golden Eye reincarnation required the willpower of an almighty. The willpower of cultivators in the 7th sub-universe was often not strong enough, even for eternal gods who had cultivated for countless eras. Eternal God Kongwu could pass because he was one of the few Yuan venerates in the 7th sub-universe, Demon Heart. Chapter 2802. My Lord is right. Xing Jin is really useless. As a subordinate of the Eternal Eternity God, the Dancing Eternity God naturally disdained Xing Jin. In his opinion, the 6 paths of samsara were much stronger than the divine judgment ground. During the Yellow Springs incident last time, the God Judgment Continent was also in a state of chaos. This time it was the same. Time and time again, I've been toyed with by a little sovereign. What a disgrace to the Master Ian God. Is he even worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as the Eternal Eternity God? The Dancing Eternity God was wearing a black robe as he sped through the 100 million wheel tomb. His arrogant expression was filled with a cold and disdainful smile. Strands of bright light shot out from his eyes, full of ambition. If I meet Lin Feng, I can kill him in a few moves. Source: See Impact? Hee. How dare he show off this in front of me? He is simply overestimating himself. The Dancing Eternity God was naturally extraordinary. He had been famous for a long time and wasn't inferior to the Three-Eyed Eternity God. However, as Yuan venerate Demon Heart, he wasn't good at group battles and wasn't very famous. Still, his Demon Heart impact could be considered unique in the divine judgment ground of Universe 7. Ultimate Secret Technique, Demon Sword Dance. Ultimate Chaos Treasure, for obliterating Wheel Banes. With these 2 traits, Grand Ian God Void Dance could be said to be famous in the child universe. His battle prowess was extraordinary. Thus, Grand Ian God Void Dance was one of the 3 Grand Ian Gods that Grand Ian God Eternal God Void Dance had borrowed. The outcome of an internal battle between Yuan venerates with one thought was rather straightforward. Source C and Source Soul were both strong. Thump. The Dancing Eternity God's heart skipped a beat when he suddenly sensed Huang Zun's aura not far ahead. This made him very excited. It was him. It had to be him. Who else could run into Huang Zun in the 100 million wheel tomb? This credit belongs to me, Dancing Eternity God. Although the Dancing Eternity God didn't belong to the divine judgment ground, he still knew a lot of things. Killing Lin Feng was the will of the sky. No matter who could kill Lin Feng, it would be a great contribution. In the primal universe, the reward from the heavenly Tao was comparable to a Hongmeng source item or even stronger. Qi. Like a sharp arrow, the demon heart of the dancing universe god was flawless. This was the origin soul of the demon race. Few people knew that the strongest Yuan venerate in the 7th origin universe was the dancing universe god. Aren't you most proficient in origin C attacks? Then let's see whose is stronger. Grand Eternity God Kongwu was extremely proud of himself. He didn't believe that he would lose to a mere human like Huang Zun in his area of expertise. When it came to the heavenly Tao of the soul, no cultivator in the original universe could compare to him, including Lin Feng. Devil Sword Dance. The moment he sensed Lin Feng, Eternal God Kongwu directly used his source soul attack. Those who were good at offense weren't necessarily good at defense. Eternal God Kongwu was actually somewhat afraid of Lin Feng, even if he wasn't willing to admit it. Therefore, he chose to take the initiative to attack. Ordinarily, Eternal God Kongwu wouldn't have taken such a risk. After all, there would be a backlash if his source soul attack failed. Even if he won, he would still suffer considerable losses. However, his opponent this time wasn't ordinary. If he used illusion techniques or controlled objects to attack, then he wouldn't be the one taking the initiative to attack. Compared to his source soul defense, Eternal God Kongwu was more confident in his source soul attack. Fecta Termination. This secret technique, combined with the origin soul attack of the Supreme Chaos Ultimate Treasure, the 4 Vanishing Wheel Banes, broke through Lin Feng's soul defense treasure in an instant. Lin Feng was indeed not strong in this aspect. In the past, the strength of his soul defense had come from the 10,000 Origin Mustard Stone. However, the 10,000 Origin Mustard Stone had fused with the Origin Sea and its grade was limited. Can't even withstand a single blow. Eternal God Kongwu sneered as the wrinkles on his face twitched. Once the opponent's soul defense treasure was broken, the success rate of his source soul attack would be more than 80%. The 4 Vanishing Wheel Banes only used the second bane to firmly gain the upper hand. However, Eternal God Kongwu's expression changed in an instant. What is that? Where the Origin Spirit attack landed, a huge city stood in the air above the vast Origin Sea. It was like a city in the sky, and a powerful force protected the Origin Sea, making it impenetrable. There was still a soul defense treasure among soul defense treasures? Eternal God Kongwu was a little dazed. He had never heard of such a thing. However, he gritted his teeth and concentrated his source soul attack on the 4 Vanishing Wheel Banes. Meng Jun Termination. The power of the third bane was much greater than the second bane. Eternal God Kongwu went all out. Since he had already attacked, he naturally wouldn't retreat. However, the city in the sky was indestructible. It was impregnable despite the attacks of the Supreme Chaos Ultimate Treasure. City of Will. This was Lin Feng's true soul defense treasure. The strength of a mind cultivator was very comprehensive. Not only did they have the offensive and defensive means of a Yuan Venerate, but they also had the defense of their source heart force. Driven by perfect source heart force, the City of Will was unshakable. I've been waiting for you for a long time. The soul defense treasure was just one of Lin Feng's trap. In an instant, the universe in Lin Feng's body erupted with a loud bang, completely suppressing Lin Feng. In terms of internal universe, Lin Feng was already a level stronger. Now, he was even more suppressed. How can his internal universe be so strong? Eternal God Kongwu turned pale with fright. The source soul attack he was so proud of collided with Lin Feng's Origin Sea but was blocked by the immovable city in the sky. In an instant, the energy of the endless Origin Sea collided head-on. Damn it! Eternal God Kongwu's advantage immediately turned into a disadvantage. He was like a sharp arrow that pierced his demon heart. It was difficult for him to advance or retreat. Eternal God Kongwu was also decisive. Since his main attack failed, he immediately retreated to preserve his strength. It's too late. Lin Feng controlled the City of Will and smashed it directly at Eternal God Kongwu's demon heart. Boom! Eternal God Kongwu's face turned pale as his head buzzed. Go! Fallen Star 5th Layer Heaven blasted out. The moment Eternal God Kongwu's will was damaged, his soul defense was shattered. The City of Will once again smashed into Eternal God Kongwu's Origin Sea. Lin Feng's eyes were bright as he attacked with all his strength. Boom, boom, boom. It was the same secret technique, but Lin Feng was stronger. Under normal circumstances, Eternal God Kongwu could block Lin Feng's source soul attack. After all, his demon heart was also very strong and his internal universe was only slightly inferior to Lin Feng's. But now, his demon heart had suffered a backlash and his willpower had been greatly damaged. He could only display 20% of his strength. Under Lin Feng's unstoppable attacks, Eternal God Kongwu's demon heart and demon heart suffered a crushing defeat. His twisted face was filled with unwillingness as his mournful roar resounded through the 100,000,000 grave. My lord will avenge me! Eternal God Kongwu roared with a fierce expression. His voice grew weaker and weaker until there was no more color in his eyes. He fell to the ground and died on the spot. Revenge! I'll be waiting. Lin Feng put away Eternal God Kongwu's treasures. His eyes flashed and his figure disappeared. Genius remembered this address in 1 second. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2803. Kongwu was killed by Lin Feng. The Eternal God's body shook. He had received a message from the Eternal God Kongwu before her death. The Eternal God, who was already at the epicenter of the epicenter, felt his vision go dark. He could sense the Eternal God Kongwu's position at the center of the 100,000,000 tomb. There was still a large distance between them and the epicenter of the epicenter. Lin Feng. The Eternal God clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. He was furious. He had thought that Lin Feng would be at the epicenter of the epicenter, and would be able to find Lin Feng here. Who would have thought that Lin Feng would do the opposite and not come here at all? There was clearly a treasure being unearthed, but Lin Feng was ignoring it. What kind of person was this? He had come here for nothing. The Eternal God was in a dilemma. He had come here with great difficulty, and the treasure was about to be unearthed. Was he going to leave just like that? However, he had entered the 100,000,000 tomb for Lin Feng. Now that he knew that Lin Feng was outside, was he going to ignore him? Damn it! Bastard! The Eternal God was so angry that his entire body trembled. He felt like a cow that was being led by the nose. He was extremely unhappy. Xing Jin. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Xing Jin was shocked and immediately calmed down. He was very familiar with this voice. It was his good brother, the Eternal God. Eternal Kongwu is dead, the Eternal God said. I know. The Eternal God's voice was as calm as ever, without any emotion. It was as if the one who had died wasn't one of his subordinates, but an ordinary person. You stay here, the Eternal God said calmly. I'll come in. The Eternal God's eyes lit up when he heard this. He revealed a look of surprise. Okay. He almost blurted it out. The Eternal God naturally hoped that the Eternal God could intervene and help, but he couldn't bring himself to ask. Now that the Eternal God had taken the initiative to help, it couldn't be better. Xing Jin, you are too useless. A familiar voice sounded out once more. Xing Jin's old face paled. He wanted to retort, but he didn't know how to. He simply humphed and didn't say anything else. If he was mocked, then so be it. In any case, it wasn't the first time he had been mocked by the Eternal God of Eternity. Furthermore, he had caused 2 of the Eternal Aeon God's 3 generals to die and 1 to be injured. The Eternal Aeon God also felt guilty. This time we'll definitely succeed. The Eternal Eternity God was willing to take action. With their combined strength, they would definitely be able to kill Lin Feng in the 100,000,000 tomb. Perhaps he could even get a share of the treasures that were unearthed. In the 100,000,000 tomb, Lin Feng was fiddling with the Grand Eternity God's treasure as he sped along. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and a satisfied smile appeared at the corner of Lin Feng's mouth. Light flashed in his hand, and a black and red drum-shaped treasure appeared. Ultimate Chaos Treasure. Lin Feng had already sensed it when Grand Eternity God Kongwu had used her origin soul attack. Now, he was sure that it was true. Great! Lin Feng was delighted. In the previous battle, rather than saying that Grand Eternity God Kongwu had used her origin soul attack, it was more accurate to say that Lin Feng had lured her into using it. In the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, Lin Feng had fought with many First Thought Yuan Venerates who weren't inferior to Grand Eternity God Kongwu. He had been able to defeat his opponents, but he had never been able to kill them. It was too difficult to kill a First Thought Yuan Venerate by using the Origin C's Origin Soul attack. The only chance was to injure a First Thought Yuan Venerate's Origin Soul and then take them down in one go. Lin Feng wouldn't have dared to do this before the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart had awakened. Just as Grand Eternity God Kongwu had said, those who were good at offense might not be good at defense. Lin Feng was indeed not good at defense. His internal universe wasn't strong, his soul defensive treasures were very ordinary, and his Origin C wasn't perfect. However, the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart had awakened and he possessed perfect Origin Heart force to control the City of Will. The Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was a top-notch primal chaos treasure. Lin Feng still couldn't fully utilize its offensive capabilities. However, the grade of the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was already there. As long as he possessed perfect Origin Heart force, he could utilize 100% of its defensive capabilities. Lin Feng had dared to take such a risk because he had the City of Will to protect it. The outcome was just as Lin Feng had expected. The last brick has been assembled. Lin Feng used his all-encompassing ability to refine this primal chaos treasure. Although it would take a lot of time, he would be like a tiger that had grown wings once the refinement was completed. This was a primal chaos treasure that could impact one's origin soul. In the core region of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, the vibrations were extremely violent and would appear every once in a while. Furthermore, they were becoming more and more frequent. The signs of the treasure being unearthed were becoming clearer and clearer, and many cultivators couldn't wait any longer. Layers of ripples appeared on the constantly expanding halo that flickered brightly and contained a powerful aura that seemed to be luring cultivators in. However, no cultivator would do this except for the newly arrived peak Yuan Venerates. After all the cultivators who had done so had died. Once they came into contact with the white halo, they would instantly feel as though they had been electrocuted. Their auras would be extinguished in an instant and they would die on the spot. A few peak Yuan Venerates who didn't believe in heresy tried to force their way in, but the outcome was exactly the same. After that, the cultivators didn't dare take the risk anymore. Treasures were important, but their lives were more important. Serves them right. The Heavenly Monarch has already said that there is danger, yet they still want to approach. Exactly. Wouldn't it be fine if we just listened to the Heavenly Monarch? Who here is more experienced than the Heavenly Monarch? Be more humble. All of them are blinded by greed. Why don't you think about your own worth? Do you think you're worthy of the treasure? Ha! We are just here to join in the fun. How can we have a share when Black Shadow, Green Hammer, and the Heavenly Monarch are around? It's better to stay away if you don't have the strength. Even if you get the treasure, you won't be able to protect it and will pay with your life instead. The Heavenly Monarch that the Yuan Venerate powerhouses were talking about was Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu. He was rather prestigious among the Taichu cultivators and had a natural leadership temperament. His tyrannical strength had subdued many Yuan Venerates powerhouses. However, Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu wasn't the strongest person in the 100 Million Wheel Burial Mound. Black Shadow and Great King Green Hammer weren't any weaker than Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu, especially Black Shadow, who always acted alone. He didn't have a group of subordinates like Great King Green Hammer, nor did he have an entourage like Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu. His strength was unfathomable. A tripartite balance of power. Zhu Ying, Great King Cyan Hammer, and Heavenly King Zhao Xian were the publicly acknowledged three great experts in 100 million wheel mound. They had never tasted defeat, and none of them were weaker than the other. However, there were no records of them fighting against each other, so it was unknown who was stronger. However, there was no doubt that the three of them were the most qualified and had the opportunity to obtain the treasures. However, at this moment, there was another force that could not be underestimated that was slowly approaching the core of the 100 million wheel tomb, the elite team of the 13th Army. They were led by Captain Wu Zong, and the 9 members under him were all comparable to ordinary almighties. The arrival of this team would undoubtedly cause the fight for the treasures in the core area to become even more intense and confusing. However, like Xingjin and Eternity God, their real target wasn't the treasures that were about to be unearthed. Instead, it was Lin Feng. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website Chapter 2804. Boom. The phantom spider hand turned into a streak of black light and entered Lin Feng's hand. Although he couldn't kill the enemy, Lin Feng was rather satisfied that he could repel the enemy. This was a common method of combat for first-thought Yuan venerates who were controlling objects. It wasn't like using the Source C, where he had to risk his life every time. I have almost grasped the second level of the phantom spider hand, coiling silk-layered shadow. Every attack was a form of practice and comprehension. Combat was the fastest way to improve one's strength. Although Lin Feng hadn't been controlling the phantom spider hand for long, his improvement was remarkable. The second level of coiling silk-layered shadow requires a control of 30 times perfect source soul power to execute. Not only can I execute it, but I can also execute it freely. It's just that I haven't mastered the control of the treasure yet. Lin Feng's control of perfect source soul power naturally wasn't 30 times. To be exact, it was only 10 times. Lin Feng didn't know exactly how much. After all, he hadn't tested it accurately. However, he was still far from 30 times. Lin Feng was well aware of this. Executing the second level of coiling silk-layered shadow didn't rely on his perfect source soul power but his perfect source heart power. Using the perfect source heart power as the source to drive the perfect source soul power and control the coiling silk-layered shadow wasn't just easier to control. It was also stronger than the normal coiling silk-layered shadow because it was integrated with the City of Will, Smash. This was the ability of a mind cultivator. It was impossible to execute the coiling silk-layered shadow by relying on perfect source heart power alone. Lin Feng wasn't strong enough by relying on perfect source soul power alone. However, the combination of the two made Lin Feng feel like a fish in water. What I lack is my internal universe. In the 100 million wheel tomb, Lin Feng had often defeated peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes. The strength of his internal universe had become the benchmark. If his internal universe was stronger than his opponent's, he could win if the phantom spider hand could unleash its power. If his internal universe was even, it would depend on luck. If his internal universe was suppressed by his opponent, he could only use the Source C attack. The power of the phantom spider hand was unquestionable. Although Lin Feng had only comprehended a small amount, when combined with the City of Will, Smash, it was comparable to a peak Yuan venerate using a chaotic ultimate treasure. However, the improvement of one's internal universe wasn't something that could be done overnight. Furthermore, Lin Feng was already at the pinnacle of Huang Zun. His internal universe was also improving at an extreme speed. It was just that he had yet to reach the level of perfection of Huang Zun. The peak Yuan venerates in the 100 million wheel tomb are almost all the best among the Yuan venerates in the sea in Hongmeng. Many of them are comparable to the threshold of an almighty. If I break through to become a godly venerate, I will be comparable to them. Using battle to nurture battle, without Universe 7's godly inquisition pressuring him step by step, it would have been impossible for Lin Feng to advance so quickly. I'm getting close. Lin Feng felt the violent tremors, each stronger than the previous one, and the frequency was also faster than the previous one. It was as if it was very anxious and impatient to break out of the ground, but it was still forcefully suppressing it. "Are you waiting for me?" Lin Feng smiled casually. He seemed to be fated with this treasure. He had stopped in the 100,000,000 wheel tomb for so long, but it hadn't appeared. He had thought that he wouldn't have a chance to obtain it. Unexpectedly, he discovered that the opportunity was still there. "I haven't seen Eternal God Xing Jin yet. I wonder where he is now." Although Lin Feng had been defeated in the previous battle with Eternal God Xing Jin, he had already figured out Eternal God Xing Jin's background and was confident now. Even if he couldn't kill Eternal God Xing Jin, he could at least make him return in defeat. However, Lin Feng knew that defeating Eternal God Xing Jin didn't mean anything. Senior Yellow Spring had also defeated Eternal God Xing Jin in the Hongmeng Sea, but what followed was a calamity. His teacher, Patriarch Taichung, the founder of the 30,000 realms of space, Heavenly Dharch Aokong, and Ancestor Qing of the Murdering God Tower, had all attacked Senior Yellow Spring at the same time and severely injured him. If I defeat Eternal God Xing Jin, what awaits me next should be the arrival of an Almighty. Lin Feng smiled and said calmly, "Then I'll just stay in the 100,000,000 wheel tomb and not go out." Almighties couldn't enter the 100,000,000 wheel tomb. However, Lin Feng knew that this was only for Almighties. For the real transcendent beings in the Hongmeng Sea, the restriction of the 100,000,000 wheel master was just something that could be easily erased. There was always a higher mountain. Why did the 100,000,000 wheel master die? There must be someone stronger than him. Just like the death of Venerable Wan Yuan, Ancestor Wan Qian, and the black-haired giant engraved in the memories deep in his bloodline. There was always someone better than you. I'm here. Lin Feng's expression gradually turned solemn. The region in front of him gave him a deep sense of pressure. There were numerous black eyes in the air. Some were open and some were half-closed. The sky was filled with black eyes, making it hard for people to breathe. The core area of the 100,000,000 wheel tomb. These black eyes were different from the silver and golden eyes. They had strong murderous intent and were hostile to every cultivator they saw. Purring! Lin Feng's mind was shaken, and he saw a black pupil shooting out a ray of light. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in front of him, holding a serrated blade in his hand, and rushed over with a murderous aura. Illusion? No, this was a willpower attack. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, they exchanged hundreds of blows. When the black shadow was killed, Lin Feng woke up and let out a long breath. Impressive. It was like an illusion, but it was real. If one's willpower wasn't strong enough, they would fall into endless slaughter. If one wasn't strong enough, they would be killed by the black shadow's fierce attacks. Oh! Lin Feng looked up. At this moment, the murderous intent in one of the black eyes had disappeared. It seemed that he could enter, but the other black eyes were still murderous. Lin Feng thought, but he didn't enter. This wasn't the direction of the epicenter, and the 100,000,000 wheel tomb was full of dangers and restrictions. Without confidence, Lin Feng didn't want to barge in. So, when he stepped into the core area of the 100,000,000 wheel tomb, the pressure was extremely heavy. The entire space was like an internal universe. If the internal universe was slightly weaker, it would collapse under the pressure. There were tens of thousands of black eyes around, just like the black eyes outside. Countless gazes were focused on him, making him shudder. The owner of the 100,000,000 wheel tomb must be a very strong mental cultivator. Even though he had fallen for countless eras, the pressure of his internal universe was still so shocking. In the dark void there were many spots of light. The deeper they went, the stronger the calling became. There were many cultivators in the surroundings. After entering this core area, it was no longer strange to see other cultivators. However, when they looked at Lin Feng, they were surprised and surprised. In the core area of the 100,000,000 wheel tomb, Huang Zun's entry was undoubtedly eye-catching. These black eyes alone weren't something an ordinary Yuan venerate could resist, let alone Huang Zun. Lin Feng. A furious roar resounded in the silent void. Among the powerhouses in the sky, a huge metal figure rushed out like a steel castle. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website,